Chapter 1059. On the giant ship, several enlighters stood on the deck and looked out at the astral river. Although the inner verse and outer verse have only been separated for a few short years, it still feels like a long time. Yes, the inner verse and outer verse have been separated, and the sixth mainland has invaded. Now that the outer verse has been unified, it all feels like a dream. Who would have thought that a puny cruiser would be able to unify the outer verse? What a joke. The outer verse has been weak for too long, and its overall strength can't even compare to a small flow zone in the inner verse. Don't underestimate that kid called Zhou Xian. He defeated the 10 Arbiter's divine fist and has the power of an enlighter. Even you and I might not be his match. The group fell silent. A youth had surpassed them, which made them feel dejected. One of them sneered. So what if he's surpassed us? There are quite a few experts who have power levels over 300,000 on this trip to the outer verse, and there's even an old senior who has lived for a long time. It's said that he once received guidance from Master Yuan. Master Yuan? That old senior from the Hall of Honor? Someone exclaimed. That's right. But I've heard that Senior Yuan admires Zhou Xian. The reason why Zhou Xian was able to become the commander of the Outerverse Allied Forces was because of Senior Yuan's support. As soon as he said this, everyone fell silent again. At this moment, a stern voice came from the depths of the ship. Don't speak nonsense. Senior Yuan is not someone you can discuss. The enlighters were shocked and they quickly bowed and retreated. After they left, an old man appeared on the deck. His face was weathered and his skin was dark red. He looked rather strange, but he was a powerhouse from the Blaze realm with a power level over 400,000. He was one of the Blaze realm's hidden powerhouses. I thought that the sixth mainland would be able to cultivate in peace after retreating, but I didn't expect to come to the outer verse. The old man sighed and then looked in the direction of the outer verse. It's just a junior, but they actually sent me here. You should be honored that I'm here. If I can't kill you, then I'll just cripple you. As he spoke, the outer verse neared space and the ship was about to reach the shore. The old man's eyes trembled as he stared into the distance. There was someone there. The astral river arc was enormous and it slowly approached the outer verse. Millions of cultivators on the ship were excited, and they displayed the arrogance of the inner verse. The inner verse was naturally arrogant towards the outer verse, and it was common knowledge that their strength was enough to crush the outer verse. As the giant arc shuddered, millions of cultivators boarded their spacecraft and flew into outer space. There was also a considerable group of cultivators flying through outer space. They were explorers, cruisers and hunters, and there were nearly 10 enlighters at the very front. Such an enormous amount of power was enough to sweep through the outer verse. This was what the blazing mist flow zone knew. Zhou Xian stood alone in outer space as he watched the astral river arc approach the shore. He watched the countless spacecraft take off and he watched the space-exploring cultivators and enlighters. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Welcome to the outer verse. I'm Zhou Xian, the Great Eastern Alliance's Alliance Master. I've been waiting for you for a long time." The starry sky was silent, and Zhou Xian's voice drowned out the millions of cultivators on the other side. All of the cultivators stared blankly at Zhou Xian. They knew that they had come to the outer verse to deal with this person, and they had come in secret. However, Zhou Xian had been waiting here for a long time. The dozen or so enlighters looked at each other blankly. One of them had a combat power of over 300,000. They belonged to the Great Eastern Alliance, which Zhou Xian had formed when he had unified most of the outerverse. They had been stationed at the edge of the astral river to prevent the innerverse from attacking the outerverse, and now they had come in handy. There were more spacecraft than the innerverse, and in terms of numbers, there were at least 10 million of them. Such a large number of spacecraft represented Zhou Xian's influence and the outerverse's determination. Zhou Xian had purposely spread the news of the innerverse being invaded by the sixth mainland to scare the innerverse's various powers into plundering the outerverse's resources. This had frightened the outerverse's various weaves, and given the countless years of subordinate relations between the innerverse and the outerverse, such a thing was not impossible. Zhou Xian had used the name of commander of the Outerverse Allied Forces to mobilize the troops, and the Outerverse's various weaves had followed suit and fully cooperated with him. If Zhou Xian failed in the end, they could push the blame onto the Hall of Honor, and it would have nothing to do with them. It could be said that Zhou Xian had been able to smoothly gather the Outerverse forces to deal with the threat from the blazing mist flow zone. This was inseparable from the Innerverse's tyranny over the years. The heavens fell silent once more. Even the hot-tempered Sylvan dragon did not make a sound. Lu Yin was obviously not scared, and he had already made preparations. They might not be able to win in a direct confrontation, and this was the Outerverse. If they started a war, the Hall of Honor would not be able to explain it to the Outerverse. They had snuck in anyway. Alliance leader Lu, what do you want? The Ross Empire elder asked. Lu Yin looked at the Astral River Archon. Stand down and let the person with the authority to speak to me. The elder's brows rose. I can decide everything. Lu Yin laughed. Is that so? But I want to speak to that senior with a power level of over 400,000. The elder's expression changed. How did you know? Lu Yin naturally would not tell him that he could tell just by looking at the rune lines. There was a very large number of rune lines on the Astral River Arc, and with Lu Yin's many years of experience in battle, he could tell that this rune line had a power level of over 400,000. However, it was still not comparable to Northgate Taisui, so it should have just reached that level. The Ross Empire elder looked back at the Astral River Arc as if waiting for something. The next moment, space distorted as a scorching heat swept over and spread towards Lu Yin, causing the originally dark space to turn red. Lu Yin's eyes went wide and he was enraged. A powerhouse with a power level of over 400,000 was actually attacking the troops behind him. This heat could not only destroy a spacecraft, but it could also melt space-exploring powerhouses. He immediately donned his universal armor and put on the giant's right arm before punching out. The giant's right arm exerted force, causing space to cave in as if it was about to collapse. The terrifying might of the attack shocked the Ross Empire elder and the Sylvan dragon. At that moment they felt an extreme sense of danger. This attack could not be blocked, and it definitely exceeded a power level of 400,000. This was the first time Lu Yin had used the giant's right arm to attack. Even during his battle with Yu Mu, he had not used his full power. This punch had a power level of close to 500,000, and it was Lu Yin's strongest punch. The heavens were torn apart and the red-skinned elder walked out. He had an ugly expression on his face as he raised both hands. God of Fire. As soon as he spoke, endless flames ignited in space, and the heat from the surrounding stars was drawn over. The endless flames transformed into a giant that stood tall in space and punched out, colliding with the power of Lu Yin's giant's right arm. The void completely collapsed as countless spatial cracks spread out in all directions. Intense star energy swept out in all directions, accompanied by extremely hot flames. Both armies continuously retreated, and even the Enlighters could only retreat, not daring to get close. After a while, space returned to normal. Lu Yin's expression did not change as he calmly looked at the other side. The red-skinned elder's eyes were gloomy as he stared at Lu Yin with murderous intent. Junior, are you Lu Yin? Lu Yin sneered. Of course. You've got guts to make an enemy out of my blazing mist flow zone, the elder said coldly. Lu Yin stared at the elder. Old man, you've got guts as well. You actually dared to attack my Outerverse allied forces. Don't you know that you're betraying the Fifth Mainland? The elder's eyes narrowed. Junior, what nonsense are you spouting? Betraying the Fifth Mainland was a crime that not just anyone could bear, and it was considered a huge crime. Even an envoy or a powerhouse with a power level of over 800,000 would not be able to bear such a crime, let alone a cultivator with a power level of over 400,000. Chapter 1060. Lu Yin raised his head. I'm the commander of the Outerverse Alliance and I have the Outerverse Alliance behind me. If you attack them, you'll be betraying the Fifth Mainland. Old man, have you thought of how to explain this to the Hall of Honor? The old man was enraged. How dare you accuse me? You're courting death. The flame giant raised its hand and slammed down. Lu Yin charged forward and collided with the giant. The old man sneered. This kid's armor could indeed withstand the fire god's attacks, but the fire god's attacks didn't just rely on flames. They also relied on strength. Even if Lu Yin could defend against the flames, he wouldn't be able to withstand the power. The Outerverse Alliance grew nervous as they watched Lu Yin charge into the flames. The cultivators from the Innerverse were similarly nervous, but those from the Blaze Realm were excited. This was the Blaze Realm's fire god, eccentric Chi's own. No one had ever heard of anyone being able to escape from the fire god, so Lu Yin was doomed. Lu Yin was very excited, but he didn't fight the fire god head-on. Instead he used the loopholes in the rune lines to charge into the fire god's body and took out the heaven flame stone. In his eyes the fire god wasn't an enemy, it was a resource of flames. Even though the fire god's power couldn't compare to the Dark Phoenix clan's final layer of black flames, it wasn't much weaker than the previous 14 layers. In fact, its temperature was even higher, which was just right for the heaven flame stone to absorb. Eccentric Qi frowned and raised a hand, causing the flames within the fire god to gather and attack Lu Yin. Lu Yin relied on the rune lines to continuously dodge, and he could withstand the occasional hit. The heaven flame stone erupted with power and rapidly absorbed the surrounding flames. Eccentric Qi didn't feel anything at first, but his expression soon changed. The fire god was actually unstable. How could this be? He hurriedly scattered the flames and tried to reform the fire god. Lu Yin immediately took out his single-sided mirror and disrupted the star energy. Eccentric Qi was a powerhouse with a power level of over 400,000, so his star energy was powerful and unshakable. However, the mirror had been upgraded 13 times, and its maximum star energy absorption had just surpassed 400,000. Eccentric Qi was unlucky, as his star energy couldn't resist the mirror's absorption and was disrupted. He couldn't affect the fire god. Eccentric Qi could only watch as the fire god became smaller and smaller until it completely disappeared and was absorbed by the heaven flame stone. Lu Yin put away the heaven flame stone and happily thanked Eccentric Qi. Many thanks. Old Monster Qi was confused. He had been a cultivator for a long time and had never encountered such a thing. What did this mean? His flame was eaten. Junior, what did you do? Old Monster Qi asked sternly. Lu Yin shrugged. It's nothing, old man. You're from the Blaze realm and they have a peerless battle technique called the Karmic Flame Sword. Do you know how to use it? Lu Yin was filled with anticipation as he asked this question. He really wanted to absorb the Tribulation Fire and use it as a supplement for the Heaven Flame Stone. The Karmic Flame Sword's power completely came from the Tribulation Fire. Back then, Carl and the others had only used a trace of it, but if this old man used it, then it would definitely not be just a trace of Tribulation Fire. Its power would be completely different as well, and Lu Yin estimated that its power level would be close to 500,000. Curmudgeon Qi looked at Lu Yin fearfully as he felt like he couldn't attack him at all. His fire battle technique had been completely ineffective against this brat, and he had even been devoured by Lu Yin. His other attacks were similarly ineffective. His fire battle techniques were ineffective against Lu Yin. Was this brat destined to be the nemesis of his Blaze realm? Old man, do you know the Karmic Flame Sword or not? Lu Yin asked impatiently. Old Monster Qi gritted his teeth. Junior, what did you do? Lu Yin raised his brows. Do you dare to use the Karmic Flame Sword? Old Monster Qi angrily barked. Tell me what you did first. Lu Yin was speechless. Countless cultivators from both sides were similarly speechless, as they could not understand what was happening. People say that the older you get, the more cunning you become. Old man, you're really cunning, Lu Yin said. Old Monster Qi sneered as he did not care about his reputation. He did not understand what Lu Yin had done, but he had stopped fighting. He felt that the more they fought, the more likely it would be that Lu Yin would benefit from it. This feeling was too sullen. Junior, I know that you have a natural counter to fire battle techniques. I admit defeat this time, but the next time, it won't be someone from the Blaze realm who comes looking for you, Old Monster Qi said. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Old man, are you trying to escape? Old Monster Qi snorted. There's no need to provoke me. I've long since passed the age of being provoked. As a junior, I acknowledge your strength, but you've unified the outerverse and offended the entire innerverse. Even if my blazing mist flow zone doesn't act against you, someone else will sooner or later. Lu Yin blinked and he looked at Old Monster Qi with admiration. As a powerhouse from the older generation, it was not easy for him to admit defeat so easily. This old man was truly shameless. Old Monster Qi was indeed shameless and he turned to leave. From his point of view, this trip had been a waste. The millions of cultivators from the blazing mist flow zone fell silent. Retreating like this was too embarrassing, but they had no choice. Their opponent's strength was not any weaker than theirs. The The dozen or so enlighters were even more unwilling, but what could they do? If Old Monster Qi had not blocked Lu Yin's punch, they would have been finished. Now that Old Monster Qi clearly did not want to continue fighting, they would only be courting death if they stayed. You were lucky to escape this time, but we'll be back soon, the old man from the Sylvan Dragon said unwillingly. Lu Yin let out a long breath. There's no need to wait for long. This time you won't be able to leave. He then raised his head. Invite the senior in. The heavens suddenly became heavy, and an indescribable pressure descended, causing all of the cultivators' hairs to stand on end. Old Monster Qi's pupils shrank. What was this feeling? The next moment, a figure appeared above Old Monster Qi and the others, looking down at them. It was the Sea King's Dome's Elder He. Lu Yin had invited Elder He to act as the final powerhouse. He was not sure what kind of powerhouse the blazing mist flow zone would send this time, but having an emissary to oversee the situation would give him some confidence. Elder He was an emissary, and his appearance had sealed the deal. Old Monster Qi's face turned from red to white, and he looked at Elder He in shock. Senior, we are from the blazing mist flow zone. Why are you making things difficult for us? The Sylvan Dragon, the Ross Empire's Enlighters, and the millions of cultivators from the blazing mist flow zone were all stunned. Who would have thought that Lu Yin would be able to invite an emissary? If they had known earlier, they would have definitely invited an emissary. Elder He did not speak. Lu Yin calmly replied, "We are all cultivators from the Fifth Mainland. As long as you promise not to resist or do anything unnecessary, this senior will not act against you." Old Monster Qi looked at Lu Yin. "Junior, what do you want?" Lu Yin's lips curled up. "Please move to the Dark Mist Weave. This junior will kindly accept this Astral River Arkansas." Half a month later, at the border of the Innerverse Day-Night Flow Zone, Lu Yin and Lan Si appeared. Lu Yin sighed emotionally as he looked at the Day-Night Flow Zone's outer space. Ever since he had embarked on the path of cultivation, he had been inextricably linked to the Day-Night clan. The apocalypse on Earth had come from Night King Qingyu, and now he had finally arrived at the Day-Night Flow Zone. It had been almost 12 years since he had started cultivating. "Have you been to the Day-Night Flow Zone before?" Lu Yin asked. Lan Si nodded. "I have. This flow zone and the Sword Sect's first flow zone are the strongest in the entire Innerverse. The Day-Night Flow Zone not only has the Day-Night clan, but also the Phoenix family, which has given birth to 2 of the 10 arbiters." If Lan Si had not mentioned it, Lu Yin would have almost forgotten about the Phoenix family. This family had always kept a low profile, and aside from expelling the Dark Phoenix clan and shaking the universe, they had not done much else. However, they had given birth to one of the 10 arbiters, which meant that they were not simple at all. The Day-Night Flow Zone. Just from the name, it's obvious that the Day-Night clan is in charge. Only the Phoenix family's territory is separated from the Day-Night clan, so it's like a small flow zone within the Day-Night Flow Zone. Lu Yin was curious. What makes the Phoenix family so powerful? Lan Si shook his head. "I'm not sure. It's said that the Phoenix family members don't die easily. Perhaps some ancient powerhouse is still alive. After all, it's an immortal bird." To be able to name a flow zone in the name of their clan, the Day-Night clan must have a powerful background. Lan Si replied, "It's said that in ancient times this place was not called the Day-Night Flow Zone, but rather the frigid Immortal Flow Zone. It was later renamed." Lu Yin did not pay much attention to such matters from ancient times. Right now he was heading to the main planet of the Day-Night Flow Zone, Night King Planet. The Day-Night Banquet was about to begin. The last time he had been invited to a day-night banquet had been a long time ago, and that was the first time he had seen someone with a power level of over 400,000 Northgate Taisui. It was also the first time he had seen a colossus from ancient times, the centipede. It was a pity that he had not been able to attend that day-night banquet, but this one was being held specifically for him. The day-night banquet was about to begin, and there were less than 4 months before the 10 arbiters would gather and enter the Neoverse to compete for the Star Tower. Night King Zhenwu wanted to deal with Lu Yin before going to the Neoverse, and Lu Yin knew that he wanted to deal with Night King Zhenwu as well. He wanted to do his best to obtain the qualifications to enter the Neoverse to compete for the Star Tower. That was an inheritance of the mountains and seas, a progenitor's inheritance. After arriving at the day-night flow zone, Lu Yin and Lan Si parted ways. Night King Planet's location was hidden, but Lu Yin had informed Night King Yuanjing the moment he arrived, and Night King Yuanjing had already sent the location to Lu Yin. Lu Yin determined the direction and headed towards Night King Planet. He was not afraid of Night King Yuanjing plotting against him, as the ancient inheritance stone was in his hands, and the Day-Night clan would not give it up. Furthermore, he was the commander of the Outerverse allied forces. Even if Night King Zhenwu had accused him of being a traitor to the Fifth Mainland and the Hall of Honor had investigated him, his status had not been stripped away. This was also why eccentric Qi had repeatedly warned him not to kill Lu Yin before he had left for the Outerverse. The day-night flow zone was very large, and Lu Yin curiously sized up the region's outer space. This region had existed for countless years, and it had existed even before the day-night clan had been born. Many things had happened during this time. Sometimes he would wonder just how large the outer space was, and what else existed beyond the 6 continents. Would there be even more powerful civilizations, and when would the human race be annihilated? Right in front of Lu Yin, a dilapidated spacecraft swayed as it flew. It was not very large and sparks would occasionally flicker from it. It was obvious that it would not be able to last much longer. Behind it, another spacecraft was rapidly approaching. This one had the Day-Night clan's insignia, and it was very obvious. Chapter 1061. Not long after, the dilapidated spacecraft exploded, and a woman escaped with a little girl in universal armor in her arms. The woman was an explorer and she flew off into the distance. The Day-Night clan spacecraft accelerated. Inside, a middle-aged man wielding a long blade walked to the top of the spacecraft. He looked at the woman from afar, raised his blade and viciously slashed down. The blade pierced through the void and tore open a large wound on the woman's back. She spat out a mouthful of blood as her body was flung into the distance. Even though she was heavily injured, she did not let go of the little girl in her arms. The little girl's eyes were red and teary, but she did not say a word and just silently hugged the woman tightly. The middle-aged man snorted and raised his blade again. At this moment, a spacecraft appeared in the distance and headed straight for him. The middle-aged man frowned and swung his blade, but it was not aimed at the woman. Instead, it was aimed at the spacecraft. The woman's face went pale and she looked at the spacecraft. Run. Inside the spacecraft, Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. He had actually attacked without saying a word. This was the Day-Night clan. He walked out of space and put away the spacecraft. He looked at the incoming blade and raised his hand to catch it. He then squeezed it forcefully, shattering it. The middle-aged man's expression changed, and he stepped into space to stand not too far away from Lu Yin. The woman carrying the little girl was in the middle. Scram! Lu Yin barked. The woman was stunned. This was the Day-Night flow zone, and this person had actually dared to tell someone from the Day-Night clan to scram. This was too arrogant. The middle-aged man was stunned as well. He had never encountered such a situation in his entire life, and this was the Day-Night flow zone. Who are you? The middle-aged man was not stupid. If this person dared to be so arrogant, then he definitely had something to rely on. He might even be on good terms with one of the clan's seniors. Lu Yin raised his head. Go back and tell Night King Zhenwu that I, Lu Yin, am here. The middle-aged man was shocked. You're Lu Yin. Lu Yin raised a hand and aimed it at the middle-aged man. He flicked his finger, causing a gale that sent the middle-aged man flying. The middle-aged man could not resist at all, and his spiritual force attack was like a gentle breeze to Lu Yin. The middle-aged man was forced back tens of thousands of meters, and the blood in his chest churned. He resisted the urge to vomit blood and boarded the spacecraft to leave. Stop. Did I allow you to board the spacecraft? Everyone inside scram. Leave the spacecraft behind. Lu Yin shouted. The middle-aged man glared at Lu Yin. You're too arrogant, Lu Yin. This is the Day-Night flow zone. So what? Lu Yin did not care and his tone was extremely overbearing. The Day-Night clan was overbearing, but he was even more overbearing than them. The middle-aged man was furious, but he did not dare to say anything in front of Lu Yin. This person had already dared to oppose the Day-Night clan while he was still in the academy, and his image was still on the ancestral land's stone tablet. He was the first person who had dared to learn the Day-Night clan's battle techniques, and he had even been invited by the clan's elders to participate in the Day-Night feast. The middle-aged man could not afford to offend such a person. Helpless, the middle-aged man left with the Day-Night clan member who was piloting the spacecraft, leaving the spacecraft behind. To the side, the woman stared at the scene in a daze. She had never thought that there would be someone more arrogant than the Day-Night clan, especially in the Day-Night flow zone. The little girl in the woman's arms looked at Lu Yin with adoration, her eyes almost sparkling with stars. After the Day-Night clan members left, Lu Yin looked at the woman. "I'll leave the spacecraft for you. Take it and leave. This is a Day-Night clan spacecraft, so no one will dare to stop you." The only reason he had helped this woman was because she had warned him to flee the moment the Day-Night clansman's blade had been unleashed. He was a kind woman. The woman's back was covered in blood and her forehead was sweating profusely. She was sweating profusely and panting heavily. She nodded and said gratefully, "I'm Bai Shui. Thank you for saving my life." Lu Yin was just about to leave when he heard the woman's name. He turned around in surprise. "Bai Shui? Bai? A primeval surname? Your surname is Bai?" Lu Yin asked. Bai Shui's expression changed and she gritted her teeth before nodding. "Yes, my surname is Bai." Lu Yin looked at her. "Why are you being chased by the Day-Night clan?" Bai Shui struggled for a moment before replying, "Because my surname is illegal." "An illegal primeval surname?" Lu Yin was stunned. "If it's illegal, then why did you tell me your name? Aren't you afraid that I'll act against you?" The universe was extremely disgusted with illegal primeval surnames. It was slightly better in the outerverse, but the further one went, the more intense this feeling became. The woman replied, "Even if it's illegal, it's still my surname. Why wouldn't I dare?" Lu Yin looked at her in shock. He was now seriously sizing her up. She wasn't considered pretty, but she was delicate and pretty. Her gaze was stubborn, and it was obvious that she wasn't someone who would admit defeat. "Who is this little girl to you?" Lu Yin asked. Bai Shui patted the little girl's head. "She's my daughter," Bai shouted. Lu Yin nodded and tossed Shamrock Enterprises' special medicine to the woman. "Apply it yourself." Bai Shui was grateful. "Thank you." Bai Shui's injuries were quite severe, but she was an explorer. With the medicine that Lu Yin had given her, her injuries were quickly brought under control. An illegal primeval surname had actually appeared in the Day-Night flow zone, which was something that Lu Yin couldn't understand. However, there were too many strange things in the universe and he didn't have the energy to care about anything else. Lu Yin gave the spacecraft to Bai Shui and told her to take her daughter away from the Day-Night flow zone. However, Bai Shui hugged Bai Xiaodai and knelt down in front of Lu Yin. "Benefactor, please help us," Bai Shui pleaded, her eyes red. Lu Yin frowned. "You only dared to introduce yourself in front of me because you heard that person call out my name. You know that I also have a primeval surname, so you're certain that I won't do anything to you. You're very smart, but why do you think that I'll help you?" Bai Shui replied, "Benefactor, you're not just helping us, you're also helping yourself. The Day-Night clan is after me because my family has precious resources that have been passed down since ancient times. If Benefactor can help me protect those resources, I'm willing to share half of them with you." Lu Yin was curious. "What kind of resources?" Bai Shui hesitated for a moment, but then she seemed to make up her mind. "It's a type of frigid water that's extremely cold. After absorbing it, any battle technique that is used will be imbued with the power of extreme cold. This kind of power is very difficult to dispel, and it's almost impossible for a powerhouse of the same level to dispel it. Either you're a lockbreaker or you have a cultivation that far surpasses the person using the battle technique." Lu Yin was flabbergasted, but he didn't take it to heart. There were many similar resources in the universe, and since the Day-Night clan had only sent a few people to kill this woman, it obviously wasn't a good resource. This woman was very smart and she wanted to use the resources to entice Lu Yin into helping her. "Leave on your own. I'm not interested in such resources," Lu Yin said. Bai Shui grew anxious. "Benefactor, this frigid water is really precious. It's been passed down since ancient times, and there definitely won't be a second place in the universe that has it." Lu Yin waved a hand. "Not interested." He then looked at Bai Shui. "I'm more interested in your family. Where is it?" Bai Shui was dejected. "They're all dead. Many years ago my family only had one heir." Lu Yin felt that it was a pity. "Why don't you find a planet to settle down on? Obtain legal status?" Bai Shui shook her head. There are no legal primeval surnames in the day-night flow zone. Then go to another flow zone, Lu Yin said. Bai Shui didn't seem to want to say more. Lu Yin sighed. He had originally wanted to ask about the primeval surname alliance, but judging from the situation of this woman's family, she definitely wouldn't know anything about it. She was actually living in the day-night flow zone, which showed how stubborn she was. To Lu Yin, saving Bai Shui was just an interlude. Even if the day-night clan knew that he was the one who had saved Bai Shui, they wouldn't cause trouble for him. Right now there was only one thing that Lu Yin wanted to do, and that was to hitch a ride. The entire day-night clan knew that he had arrived and all eyes were on him. Although he didn't plan on hiding, he didn't plan on being too high-profile either. In that case, hitching a ride was a good idea and he could treat it as a vacation. He looked to his left and saw quite a few rune lines. A spacecraft was approaching. Lu Yin's expression turned strange as he looked at the spacecraft. What a coincidence. It was the Lingling clan's spacecraft, and within it Lu Yin saw Ling Kei's rune lines. Ling Kei, I love you. Ling Kei, you're the best. Ling Kei, I love you. Ling Kei, you're the best. The familiar voices traveled to Lu Yin's ears, and he stood at the top of the spacecraft, feeling rather speechless. Ling Kei had once again reorganized his support group. Inside the spacecraft, Ling Kei was comfortably drinking wine as he looked outside. This was the life that he had been looking forward to. Listening to the idolizing cheers from his support group and being surrounded by exclamations of admiration, envy and even jealousy was what he loved the most. There was nothing more comfortable than this. This was his second time attending the day-night banquet. The first time he had attended, he had been one of the unequaled Lemeters, and Night Queen Yanqing had personally received him. So many years had passed since then. Why did the voices stop? Ling Kei was dissatisfied. Keep shouting. If you stop, I'll deduct your money. Your shameless self-confidence hasn't changed, Ling Quebec, a voice rang out. Ling Kei was shocked and he turned around. Lu Yin sat on the sofa and waved his hand. The girls in the support group looked at Ling Kei in confusion. Ling Kei waved for them to leave and then looked at Lu Yin in shock. Why are you here? I was just passing by and bumped into you. Ling Kei's mouth twitched. What a coincidence. You should hurry up and leave. I don't want to be implicated by you. Don't you know that you're surrounded by enemies? Including your Lingling clan. Lu Yin looked at him amused. Ling Kei was speechless. The entire Innerverse benefits have been eroded by you. Do you think that you'll have a good ending in the Innerverse? Besides, this is the day-night flow zone. I don't want to be implicated by you and die for no reason. Lu Yin replied, I won't implicate you. The day-night clan won't do anything to me, at least not for the time being. Ling Kei was helpless. He understood Lu Yin and he knew that there was no way to chase him away. Did you go to the Cosmic Sea to visit Yaya? Lu Yin asked. Ling Kei shook his head. I've been staying in the clan. If not for the day-night banquet, I wouldn't have been able to leave. What about Ling Gong? How would I know? She wasn't with me. You were invited to the day-night banquet. Lu Yin asked. Ling Kei raised his brows and gave Lu Yin an unfriendly look. What do you mean? Are you the only one? Yes, you're very powerful now. You defeated the divine fist of the 10 arbiters and are now on par with Night King Jinwu. But don't look down on others. My Lingling clan's innate gift is very powerful. Once we completely merge, our power will multiply, and we'll definitely be able to catch up to you. Chapter 1062. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat when he heard Ling Kei's words. Like Ling Palace? She hasn't completely fused with it yet, Ling Kei answered directly, but then he suddenly paused and glared at Lu Yin. You're trying to trick me. Lu Yin shrugged. No, I didn't even hear what you just said. Is that so? Ling Kei was skeptical. At that moment the door opened and a man walked in. Young master, your wine. Ling Kei casually replied, Put it here. The man walked over and placed the wine on the table. Just as he was about to leave, Lu Yin placed a hand on the man's arm and looked at him in surprise. It's you? Ling Kei was puzzled. The man's expression changed when he saw Lu Yin. It's you? Lu Yin smiled. The universe is so big, but you just had to appear in front of me. Interesting. The man's face went pale and he tried to pull his arm back, but he was much weaker than Lu Yin and could not move at all. Ling Ke was puzzled. You know each other? Lu Yin looked at Ling Quebec. Is this person from your Lingling clan? Ling Ke shook his head. I picked him up along the way. When the 6th mainland invaded, this guy was heavily injured and my Lingling clan rescued him along the way. Why? Is there a problem? Do you know his identity? Lu Yin asked. Ling Ke looked at the man. The man gritted his teeth and his expression turned ugly. Lu Yin, I was hired to kill you. There is no grudge between us, so please let me go. Lu Yin was amused. You chased us all the way from Chaos Flow Zone to the Starfall Sea and forced my 2 seniors to go missing, and you're telling me that it was a misunderstanding? Feng Mo. This man was Feng Mo. He had been hired by Deep Crimson Hall to kill Lu Yin's group and force them to go to the Starfall Sea to participate in the Sea King's son-in-law selection. If not for him, Big Pow and Little Pow would have dared to come out and were still missing. Lu Yin had not planned on searching for this person as the universe was too big. However, he had never expected this person to appear in front of him. Ling Ke was shocked and looked at Feng. Are you chased after this guy? How stupid. Why didn't you kill him? Feng Mo's arm was in intense pain, and beads of sweat dripped down from his forehead. He was a hunter, and after leaving the Sea King's dome, he had been chased down by the Neo-Human Alliance's Spectre clan. He had been lucky enough to escape and hide in the Starfall Sea. He had thought that he would be fine after some time, but he had never expected for the Innerverse and Outerverse to undergo a huge change. The 6th mainland had invaded and he had narrowly escaped death. In the end, he had been rescued by the Lingling clan. He hadn't stayed in the Lingling clan to serve Ling Ke because he wanted to repay his debt of gratitude. Rather, he had been ordered by the relentless slayers to investigate the Lingling clan's innate gift and see if there was any way for him to find out anything. He hadn't expected to run into Lu Yin. Young master, no matter what I did in the past, I'm now a member of the Lingling clan. Please save me, young master, Feng Mo begged. Ling Ke looked at Lu Yin. He's from Chaos Flow Zone's relentless slayers. Do you think that he's staying in the Lingling clan to repay a debt of gratitude? Ling Ke's expression changed and he stared at Feng Mo with murderous intent. Didn't you say that you came from the Starfall Sea? Feng Mo pleaded, young master, But before he could finish speaking, Feng Mo suddenly attacked Ling Ke with a palm. Ling Ke was an explorer, and although his innate gift was extraordinary, it was still difficult for him to react to a hunter's sneak attack. Lu Yin used his right hand to flip Feng Mo over and smash him into the ground, causing Feng Mo's attack to miss. Not only that, half of his body went numb and he crashed into the ground and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Lu Yin looked down at Feng Mo. How dare you sneak attack me right in front of me? I haven't seen you in a few years, but you've become stupid. Ling Ke stared coldly at Feng Mo as he had almost been ambushed. This person had tried to divert Lu Yin's attention and escape, which was too hateful. Brother Lu, leave this person to me. I want to see what he's trying to do by staying in the Lingling clan, Ling Ke said coldly. Lu Yin nodded and exerted some strength in his palm, using overlaying stacks to enter Feng Mo's body through his arm and shatter all of Feng Mo's meridians, rendering him a cripple. Lu Yin let go of Feng Mo. I'll leave him to you. Interrogate him about everything that happened after he chased us into the Starfall Sea. The fate of my 2 seniors is unknown, and I don't know if it has anything to do with him. Ling Ke nodded. Lu Yin's interrogation of Feng Mo went smoothly, and it didn't take long for Lu Yin to learn about Feng Mo's experiences. This guy was actually chased by the Neo-Human Alliance's Spectre clan, but he didn't die. He's really lucky, Ling Ke sighed. Lu Yin looked over Feng Mo's experiences and recalled what had happened in the past. He knew that Feng Mo had been chased because of Lu Yin. It was because he had given Faceless an order that the Spectre clan had chased after him. If that was the case, then Lu Yin could indeed impersonate the Spectre clan's upper echelons and give them orders. As for Big Pow and Small Pow, Lu Yin had never encountered them again. Wait a minute. Lu Yin carefully reviewed Feng Mo's experiences. Did he explain how he escaped from the Spectre clan? Ling Ke hurriedly looked over Feng Mo's experiences, and his expression changed slightly. Someone who could escape from the Spectre clan was definitely not simple. Since Feng Mo had been able to escape from the Spectre clan, then he should be able to escape from them as well. Furthermore, Feng Mo had even escaped the Sixth Mainland's pursuit from the Starfall Sea. Just as Lu Yin was thinking about this, a voice came from outside the door. Young master, Feng Mo has disappeared. Lu Yin's eyes trembled and he looked around in all directions. Feng Mo's rune lines were nowhere to be seen. He then scanned the spacecraft, but Feng Mo's rune lines were still nowhere to be seen. Ling Kei's expression turned ugly. Search. This guy definitely didn't escape. Everyone on the spacecraft frantically searched, but it was as if Feng Mo had evaporated into thin air. Feng Mo was from the Relentless Slayers, so he had a way to restrain his aura. However, his meridians had been broken, so how had he managed to escape? The Lingling clan's expert who had been guarding Feng Mo was also a hunter, so Feng Mo should not have been able to escape so easily. No matter how they asked, no one knew how Feng Mo had managed to escape. Lu Yin's expression darkened. Feng Mo definitely had something extraordinary on him, or else he would not have been able to escape. Now that Feng Mo had escaped, it would be difficult to find him again. Feng Mo was an assassin, and Lu Yin believed that Feng Mo would definitely remember his aura. Feng Mo's incident put Ling Kei in a bad mood for the next 2 days, and he was not even interested in the cheers of his support group. 2 days later, Ling Kei sighed as he looked at the enormous black planet in the distance. We've arrived at Night King Planet. Lu Yin stared at the planet in front of him in shock. Was that a planet? It was too big. Night King Planet was indeed a planet, but it was much, much bigger than any planet Lu Yin had ever seen. It was like a monster lying in the heavens, blocking their path forward. Night King Planet is one of the largest planets in the Immerse. It's rumored that the Day-Night clan's first Night King came from this planet, and all the elites of the Night King bloodline are gathered there. No one knows what kind of background they have, Ling Kei said. Even though he was from the Lingling clan, he was still filled with dread when it came to Night King Planet. Lu Yin stared at Night King Planet. There were a terrifying number of rune lines on the planet, which meant that there was definitely a powerhouse who far surpassed the emissary level. This was the Night King clan's background. The Night King banquet was being held on Night King Planet. Is the current head of the Day-Night clan Night King Dijiang? Lu Yin asked. Ling Kei nodded. That's right. Night King Dijiang isn't the most powerful person in the history of the Day-Night clan, but he's still not bad. At the very least, he hasn't suffered any defeats. According to the older generation, Night King Dijiang is about the same as us when we were younger. He's considered to be invincible. He hasn't shown himself in a long time. Could he be dead? Lu Yin asked with some anticipation. Ling Kei's expression changed. Keep your voice down. This is Night King Planet and there are Night King clan experts everywhere. You might want to die, but I don't want to die. Lu Yin smiled and stared at Night King Planet. Aside from the rune lines that were exposed, there were definitely other hidden rune lines as well. He wanted to see what kind of background the Day-Night clan, one of the most powerful clans in the Universe, had. Spacecraft after spacecraft headed towards Night King Planet. From time to time, a spacecraft would stop and greet Ling Quebec. Ling Kei smiled in response. Of course, the cheers from his support group did not diminish, which made the onlookers look at him strangely. However, they could not help but praise him against their will. Brother Lu, you should form a support group as well. Look at how envious they are. Ling Kei sighed. Lu Yin did not know where Ling Kei had seen the envy in Lu Yin's eyes. As long as you're happy. Alright, Brother Lu, we've arrived at Night King Planet. I still have some old friends to meet, so I'll take my leave now. After successfully passing through the inspection and bringing Lu Yin into Night King Planet, Ling Kei decided to chase him away. He did not want to be misunderstood as Lu Yin's ally. Even an idiot would know that Lu Yin had a bad relationship with the Day-Night clan. Lu Yin knew what Ling Kei was thinking, so he did not stay for long. He simply borrowed Ling Kei's help to enter Night King Planet. Night King Planet was huge and the buildings were similarly tall. They were ridiculously tall and any one of them was several hundred meters tall. Some of them even reached into the sky and swayed back and forth. The planet's soil was gray and so was the sky. It gave off a solemn feeling as if there was no laughter on this planet. There was only the nobility, strictness and insufferably tyrannical aura of the Night King bloodline. This planet fully displayed the Night King bloodline's moral character. Anyone who arrived at Night King Planet would first feel the pressure from this ancient clan. Lu Yin felt this as well, so he let the monkey out. Come, take a piss. The monkey was stunned and confused. What did you say, seventh bro? Lu Yin smiled. Take a piss. The monkey was enraged. Seventh bro, you're insulting me. Lu Yin rolled his eyes. Boring. He then put the monkey away and looked at the rune lines around him before heading in a certain direction. The day-night banquet was being held in Night King Planet's main city, Evernight City. With Lu Yin's speed, he quickly arrived at Evernight City. As long as one could enter Night King Planet, they did not need to go through any checks to enter Evernight City. Lu Yin's horizons were broadened when he arrived at Evernight City. The entire city's buildings were filled with the grandeur of an emperor. They seemed deathly still, but the square buildings gave off a different kind of oppressive feeling. However, they were also filled with a dark nobility. Lu Yin did not like this city as it seemed to be overlooking everything else. Anyone who came to this city would feel insignificant. I'll tear this city down one day. Evernight City was huge, but there were not many people. The Night King clan had very few people to begin with, and many of the Day-Night clan did not even have the qualifications to come to Night King Planet. As a result, the city was silent and it was almost like an empty city. If I opened a shop here, I'd definitely lose money, the monkey sighed. Chapter 1063. Lu Yin headed towards the place with the highest number of rune lines. At the same time, the moment Lu Yin arrived at Night King Planet, Li Zimo also arrived at the neighboring First Flow Zone. Lu Yin had brought a group of people from the Outerverse to the Innerverse, and Li Zimo was one of them. His goal was to join the Sword Sect, which was both his own wish and the mission that Lu Yin had given him. The Sword Sect represented the highest level of swordsmanship in the Innerverse and Outerverse. Even in the Neoverse, there might not be an existence that could surpass the Sword Sect in terms of swordsmanship. Back in the 6th Mainland's Dao Source 3 skies, Z had been shocked by the Sword Sect's swordsmanship. For a genius swordsman like Li Zimo, the Sword Sect was the place that he yearned for the most. Without reaching the First Flow Zone, one would never be able to imagine the status of swordsmanship in this flow zone. The simplest example was that out of 10 cultivators, at least 5 would use swords. This was the First Flow Zone. Li Zimo looked at the distant sky with a burning gaze. This was the place that he had always dreamed of. Fortunately, he had left the Xinwu continent. Evernight City had a city within a city called Nightless City. It had been built specifically for the purpose of hosting banquets. Within the city there were treasure gambling dens, scripture pavilions, brothels, casinos, and more. Almost everything that could be done in the outside world could be found here, and they were all of the best quality. Nightless City lived up to its name. It was brightly lit, and not a single trace of darkness could be seen during the banquet. Lu Yin had just arrived at Nightless City. He looked at the bustling streets in front of him, the fragrance wafting through the air and the pink flowers that filled the sky. He wondered if this was Evernight City, as it was completely different from the outside world. Many people had gathered here from all directions. Some were from the Day-Night clan, but there were also cultivators from other powers. The universe was vast and there were many geniuses. Even if there were only a few from each flow zone, this place would still be packed. The Nightless City's guests were all youths with great potential. There was no need to mention the top 100 rankings, but even those at the level of Northline flow zone's Lily Ann were qualified. There were many people at Lily Ann's level in the Innerverse, and even a small portion of them was enough to make Nightless City flourish. The people that Lu Yin saw here were all the universe's famous youths. Any one of them was a famous genius from a flow zone. Ling Kei's rune lines were among them. Aside from Ling Kei, there were many other rune lines, and 2 of them even surpassed Ling Kei's rune lines. If they were from the younger generation, they should be experts at the top of the top 100 rankings. As soon as he stepped into Nightless City, beautiful and enchanting women immediately surrounded him and led him inside. Seventh bro, it's time for you to become a man as well. The monkey suddenly sighed. Lu Yin pursed his lips and tactfully rejected the girls. He looked around and his gaze was attracted by a tall, ancient building in the distance. He slowly walked over. Suddenly he smelled a special fragrance. It was extremely alluring and made him drool. It was the smell of a top-notch delicacy. He followed the scent and saw a cultivator cooking a dead fish-like creature not too far away. Isn't that the fruit fish in the galaxy? I've heard that these are top-notch ingredients and each one is extremely valuable. They're extremely difficult to catch. These fish live in the depths of the astral river, and anyone who isn't an enlighter shouldn't even think of approaching them. Even if you're an enlighter, catching these fish depends on luck. Otherwise, you might be eaten by the monsters in the astral river if you're not careful. Oh, fruit fish. I've seen an elder in my family eat one before. It's said that every inch of this fish's flesh contains the fragrance of hundreds of mutant fruits. More importantly, the fish's flesh will gradually resemble the flavor of your favorite fruit. It's amazing. Not bad. This fruit fish can't even be bought with money, but they actually have it here. As expected of the Day-Night clan. This banquet was worth it. Lu Yin walked closer and saw that the area was already filled with people. They were all youths and they all stared at the fruit fish with burning eyes. They didn't know who would end up eating it. "Uncle, how much is this fruit fish?" Someone asked a cute little girl with an expectant expression. The cultivator who was cooking the fish was a middle-aged man, and he didn't even raise his head as he replied, "There's no need to spend money in Nightless City. The Day-Night clan has already paid for it. If you want to eat it, come and get it yourself." The crowd clamored and everyone grew excited. "It's free. The Day-Night clan is too generous. This isn't something that can be bought with money. How much can a fruit fish cost at most? The main thing is that it can't be bought. I never thought that I'd be so lucky today." Lu Yin was also looking forward to it. Fruit fish sounded delicious. Was this the flavor of his favorite fruit? More and more people gathered around and soon there were over 100 people crowding the area. There were over 10,000 people participating in the banquet, and over 100 people were gathered here. Everyone was squeezing forward, waiting for the moment that the fruit fish was ready. As the fragrance wafted through the air, the middle-aged cultivator opened the pot. The fruit fish boiled and the flesh of the fish bloomed like flower petals. All sorts of exotic fruit fragrances filled the air, causing everyone to salivate. The people at the very front tried their best to eat the fruit fish, but there was an invisible force around the fruit fish that isolated them from the crowd. The middle-aged cultivator was pleased with himself. He had promised the Day-Night clan that he would give the fruit fish to them, but he hadn't said that he would definitely let them eat it. These juniors didn't have the qualifications to eat his food. After the banquet ended, the fruit fish would be his and the Day-Night clan had already paid for it. It was perfect. They were just a bunch of kids. The people at the very front couldn't even push aside the invisible force, and even their battle techniques were useless. Gradually, everyone's expressions changed. Eating this fish wasn't that easy and there really wasn't anything free. Lu Yin looked at the middle-aged cultivator strangely. Although this person hadn't revealed his rune lines, there was no mistaking his aura. It was a terrifying aura with a power level of over 300,000. This person was an enlighter. Lu Yin felt that a cultivator with a power level of over 300,000 was toying with them. The people at the front were defeated and the people at the back took their places. The fruit fish attracted quite a few people but no one was able to eat it. The middle-aged cultivator's lips curled up as he wanted to laugh. At this time Lu Yin squeezed his way to the front. He had adjusted his appearance so no one recognized him. Otherwise he would have been targeted by the Day-Night clan. As he looked at the tempting fruit fish, Lu Yin smiled at the middle-aged cultivator. The middle-aged cultivator blinked and smiled back, but he cursed inwardly, "What an idiot. Hurry up, we can't eat it anyway." "Hurry up," someone urged from the back. Lu Yin raised his hand, and his star energy condensed into a pair of chopsticks that slowly approached the fruit fish. He stared at the boundless rune lines that surrounded the fruit fish, and it was almost impossible for the younger generation to break through this level of defense. However, it was useless against Lu Yin. Lu Yin's chopsticks touched the invisible barrier, and with a slight shake of his wrist, a huge force flowed through the chopsticks and penetrated the invisible barrier. He easily touched the fruit fish, picked it up and put it into his mouth. The entire process took less than 2 seconds. The middle-aged cultivator was stunned. What was going on? Behind him, no one had expected Lu Yin to eat the fruit fish, and their eyes were filled with envy. The fruit fish melted in his mouth and there was a mellow and sweet taste to it. There was also an indescribable fragrance that filled his taste buds. This fragrance was very strange and alluring, and when it slid down his esophagus and down his throat, It caused his body to tremble. Everything in front of him seemed to change, and the familiar yet strange taste brought him back to the river of time. He heard the laughter of children in his ears. "Little Seven, eat. This fruit is the best." "Second bro, can I eat it?" "I don't dare." "Eat it, it's fine." "Second bro, you should come up first. The pool is cold." "Eat it, we'll leave once you're done." Lu Yin held his chopsticks in a daze and everything in front of him blurred. He didn't know when this had happened. Who was that second bro? Had he ever tasted something like that before? That fragrance was clearly unfamiliar, but why did it feel so familiar? This was his body's instinctive memory and he had definitely tasted it before. "Hey, hurry up." Someone behind him shouted in dissatisfaction, pulling Lu Yin out of his memories. He frowned and violent star energy swept out in all directions. "Shut up." The ground trembled and a storm of star energy swept the surrounding cultivators away. Layers of ripples rippled through the void, shocking everyone. At this moment even the middle-aged cultivator was astonished, and he looked at Lu Yin with astonishment and amazement. Lu Yin looked at the fruit fish and picked up his chopsticks again, slowly eating one bite at a time. No one dared to argue and no one dared to step forward. The pressure from before had shocked them. Many people in the crowd looked at each other hesitantly. They felt that Lu Yin looked familiar, but they couldn't recall where they had seen him before. It didn't take long for Lu Yin to finish the entire plate of fruit fish. He could taste that fragrance and sweetness, but he could no longer recall it or feel that warmth. The chopsticks dissipated and Lu Yin looked at the middle-aged cultivator. "Thank you." The middle-aged cultivator curled his lips and cursed his bad luck before turning to leave. The surrounding cultivators dispersed, and only Lu Yin remained in place, deep in thought. That memory should have been his. Did he have a second bro? Someone walked over from behind him and politely said, "Brother, I'm One Beard. Let's get to know each other." Lu Yin looked over. 65th on the top 100 rankings, One Beard from the One family? One Beard smiled. "My nickname is Bo Yu and I've embarrassed myself in front of you. May I know your name?" Lu Yin thought for a moment, and then his face changed back to his original appearance. Lu Yin. He had caused quite a commotion here and he had definitely been targeted by the Day-Night clan. Even the Amethyst Trading Company had been able to see through his disguise, and the Day-Night clan had been able to deduce countless disguises based on his true appearance. Lu Yin's identity had been exposed long ago, so there was no need for him to hide anything. When Beard blinked and laughed dryly. "So it's Brother Lu. I've heard a lot about you." Lu Yin's lips curled up. "Brother Wen, I've heard a lot about you as well." When Beard was a little embarrassed. Lu Yin had unified the Outerverse and was now a potential enemy of the entire Innerverse. The Outerverse represented the interests of the entire Innerverse, and the Wen family was no exception. Any Innerverse power's successor would feel awkward when they met Lu Yin, and they wouldn't know how to face him. Chapter 1064. Lu Yin smiled and did not mind Wen Sa's attitude. He turned and left. Ever since he had stepped onto this path he had become the enemy of countless people, so it did not matter. Wen Sa watched Lu Yin leave. Even though they might become enemies in the future, he could not help but admire Lu Yin. Not everyone dared to do what he did and even fewer had the ability to do so. Isn't that Lu Yin? It really is him. He defeated the 10 Arbiters' Divine Fist, and I heard that he's only been cultivating for a dozen years. He's an absolute genius and he even unified the Outerverse. I wonder how he cultivated. He's courting death. He's threatening the interests of the entire Innerverse, and he's an enemy of the Day-Night clan. How dare he come here? He won't live for much longer. The Innerverse 8 Great Flow Zones won't let him live. A scattered Outerverse is in line with the Innerverse interests. No matter what, this person unified the Outerverse and defeated the 10 Arbiters. That's enough to make history. It's a pity. If he had been able to mature, his future would have been shocking. Lu Yin had regained his appearance and everyone who saw him recognized him. He walked step by step towards the simple building in the center of Nightless City. All sorts of discussions, mockery and exclamations rang in his ears, but he remained unperturbed. There was a pavilion in the center of Nightless City called the Vigil Pavilion. It had 99 floors and it was built to protect the Night King clan. It had once been where the first Night King had overlooked the world. It was rumored that the first Night King had held a banquet and invited all the top geniuses in the universe. He stood at the top of the pavilion and no one dared to challenge him. He looked down on the world and he himself became the 100th floor of the Vigil Pavilion. That was how the Vigil Pavilion came to be. Now, the Vigil Pavilion had become a must-visit location for the banquet. Lu Yin arrived outside the Vigil Pavilion and looked at the towering pavilion in front of him with a look of amazement. Countless rune lines filled the air as hundreds or even thousands of young elites who had been invited gathered there. As long as one could enter the Night King planet, they would be able to enter the Nightless City and enter the Night Vigil Pavilion. However, not everyone could enter the Night Vigil Pavilion unimpeded. The Vigil Pavilion had 99 floors, and each floor had an isolation barrier that required strength to climb. Those who were capable could reach the top. Throughout history, aside from the first Night King, no one had ever managed to surpass the 99th level. Even the genius third Night King had only managed to reach the 99th level. Night King Zhenwu's previous record had also been the 99th level, which was comparable to the third Night King's. Whether or not Night King Zhenwu would be able to surpass the 99th level this time would be the most interesting part of this banquet. Lu Yin's arrival attracted the attention of countless people. On the 38th level, when Qian'er was chatting happily with a few youths when someone called out Lu Yin's name. She immediately looked down and saw a lonely figure standing quietly outside the Night Vigil Pavilion. It really was Lu Yin. When Qian'er's eyes lit up. Women all worshipped heroes and Lu Yin was undoubtedly one of them. He had unified the Outerverse and defeated the divine fist of the 10 arbiters. Even though the Day-Night clan had framed him as a traitor of the Fifth Mainland, his reputation had not been affected at all. Those rumors could only deceive ordinary cultivators, but the disciples of large families all knew of the Day-Night clan's methods. So it's Lu Yin. He really came. We didn't believe that he'd come when we saw his name on the banquet list, one of the men exclaimed. Someone else coldly replied, "It's good that he's here. This kid has shown off his abilities and he'll definitely die. Everyone knows about the grudge between him and Arbiter Zhenwu. His courage is commendable for daring to come, but it's a pity that he's all brawn and no brains." Not far away, Han Chong looked at Lu Yin with a complicated expression. A few years ago they had both been students of the Astral Combat Academy, and the gap between them had not been that great. But now, this person had actually defeated one of the 10 arbiters, which was inconceivable. Perhaps only Arbiter Wen could suppress him, but that was only for now. In a few years, Arbiter Wen and the others would surpass the age limit, and who would be able to stop him then? Those who were truly of the same generation as him would have been left far behind. The 4 unequaled limiters of the past might not even be able to withstand a single blow from him. Sun Jiong had been invited to Night King Planet and he was currently in the Night Vigil Pavilion on the 40th level, looking down at Lu Yin from above. Although he was standing high up, he subconsciously retreated when Lu Yin's gaze swept over him, not daring to meet his eyes. The gap between them was too great, just too great. Sun Jiong had thought that this person would definitely die after the Innerverse and Outerverse had been separated, but now Lu Yin had actually reached this point. Sun Jiong no longer had the qualifications to compete with this person, and he did not even dare to look at him. Heart Phoenix had also come. Although he was only a limiter, he was from the Phoenix clan and had an extraordinary innate gift, so he was also qualified to be invited. Heart had once challenged Lu Yin, but now that he looked at the person below him, he no longer had any desire to challenge Lu Yin. Only his elder brother could compete with him. Ling Ke entered the Night Vigil Pavilion before Lu Yin, and when he saw that Lu Yin had attracted everyone's attention, he felt a little jealous, but he also rejoiced that he had not come with Lu Yin. Otherwise he would have lost face. It was a pity that he could not bring his support team in. On the 70th level of the Night Vigil Pavilion, Casanova and Mou both looked down. "He's Lu Yin?" Mou asked. Casanova nodded. "You've never seen him before?" "Nope," Mou replied. Casanova was astonished. "His battle with the Divine Fist shook the universe. You haven't seen that video?" Mou indifferently replied, "Not interested." "So you're interested in him now?" Mou's gaze turned serious. She was not interested in Lu Yin's battle prowess, but she was interested in Lu Yin's lock-breaking ability. He had jumped from 1 star to 5 star in one go. This person's lock-breaking ability had improved too quickly. Don't compare yourself to him. He's a freak. He dared to compete with me in lock-breaking back then, and now he's left us in the dust, Casanova said helplessly. Although Lu Yin had only wandered the Innerverse for a few years, he had still come into contact with many people and things. In the Night Vigil Pavilion he had interacted with too many people. Even in the Day-Night clan he had interacted with quite a few people such as Zhanlong Day-Night, Tiankong Day-Night, Ro Day-Night, Night Queen Yanqing, Night King Gu and so on. Lu Yin's mere appearance in the Night Vigil Pavilion caused the entire place to fall silent. This was the current Lu Yin. Looking at the Night Vigil Pavilion, Lu Yin smiled and stepped in. The pavilion required one to climb level by level, and the isolation was practically non-existent to Lu Yin. When he reached the 16th level, a youth named Han Kuei was excited, as if he had just brushed shoulders with a legend. He was Han Chang's younger brother and people called him the Little Art Saint. Lu Yin reached the 22nd level and Lily and bowed slightly. She had come as well. Lu Yin reached the 38th level and Wen Qian'er smiled sweetly. Lu Yin reached the 40th level and glared at Sun Jiong. Sun Jiong was startled and took a few steps back, almost falling out of the pavilion. Lu Yin walked up to the 65th floor where Mira and Michelle greeted him. Lu Yin nodded in response. He even saw Zhanlong Day-Night standing alone in a corner. Lu Yin continued onwards. When he reached the 70th level he saw Casanova and Mou, whose eyes were filled with curiosity. When he reached the 75th level, a youth named Song Mu stepped forward and bumped shoulders with him, but he was sent flying instead. My name is Song Mu and I'm a follower of the 10 warlords. Just because you defeated the Divine Fist doesn't mean that you can defeat the warlords. Lu Yin reached the 90th level where there was almost no one left. There was only a tall but extremely ugly man who was glaring at him coldly. This man was called Avery and he was known as the second warlord. I've been waiting for you for a long time, Lu Yin, Avery barked. Lu Yin looked at him. You're Avery? We've fought before. Avery did not understand. When? A ported battle, Lu Yin answered. Avery was shocked. You fought me before? He then grinned. You were ravaged by me, weren't you? Lu Yin smiled and walked closer to Avery. Try attacking me. Avery's expression changed and he did not hold back. He opened his mouth and unleashed God's wail. This was his battle technique, and when combined with his innate gift of sound, it was enough to crush any powerful enemy. Back during the ported battle, Lu Yin had been killed by a single roar. Now he was facing God's wail again, and this time, it was Avery's full-powered attack. Lu Yin did not move and he merely glared at night. Everything in front of Avery's eyes turned dark, and he sank into the darkness. His brain was shaken and blood flowed from his nose, ears, mouth and eyes. He slowly squatted down and looked at the ground, but he could not see anything clearly. Lu Yin walked in front of Avery and looked down at him. Who gave you the confidence to stand in front of me? He then kicked Avery into a corner like he was trash. He then looked up and walked to a higher level. There were no obstructions in the Night Vigil Pavilion, so everyone could see everything from top to bottom. Many people had seen the scene from before, and although they hated Avery's arrogance, he was still ranked 4th on the top 100 rankings. Now he was in such a miserable state that he could not even retaliate. Everyone looked at Lu Yin's back with envy, jealousy, fear and worship. All sorts of emotions mixed together to form a river of gazes as they watched Lu Yin walk to a higher level. Avery was on the 90th level, and one level above him was a girl named Qing Longlong. She was ranked 3rd on the top 100 rankings, second only to Summer and Tai Yuanjun. She was from the Gu Flow Zone. The Gu Flow Zone was the only one of the 8 great flow zones that did not interact with the outside world, and it was also very difficult for outsiders to enter. Even if the 6th mainland invaded, the Gu Flow Zone was a place that they did not want to invade. It was filled with poisonous creatures, and no matter how strong one was, it was difficult to guarantee that they would not be poisoned. Especially when the weather had changed, everyone's power level had to be suppressed to below 200,000. Entering the Gu Flow Zone was suicide. Qing Longlong had started a massacre in the Gu Flow Zone and become a Regis King. Like Summer and Tai Yuanjun, she had the qualifications to enter the Neoverse and compete for the Star Tower inheritance. However, Avery, who was ranked 4th, had not been crowned king. This was a qualitative difference. Lu Yin and Qing Longlong looked at each other, but Qing Longlong's gaze was calm. She only glanced at Lu Yin for a moment before ignoring him. Lu Yin did not say anything to her either. There was no one on the higher levels of the night vigil pavilion, and he did not plan on going up. From this position he felt as if the entire universe was under his control. Chapter 1065. Half of the elites of the Innerverse and Outerverse were gathered here, and they represented the future of the Innerverse and Outerverse. Stepping on them was equivalent to stepping on the entire universe. This was the Day-Night clan's method. Whether it was the architectural style, the planet, or the city, they were all superior to others. It was truly detestable. What was even more detestable was that Night King Zhenwu had yet to appear, and everyone was waiting for him. The other 10 arbiters had not appeared either. 7th bro, you've lost your status. You should have appeared later the better, the monkey said unhappily. Lu Yin rubbed his cosmic ring. When did the Day-Night clan plan to take back the inheritance stone? Could it be during the Day-Night feast? Lu Yin was in no hurry to contact Night King Yuanjing. Lu Yin walked all the way to the top and the discussions below grew louder. Most people in the Innerverse did not like Lu Yin, as he had offended too many people by unifying the Outerverse. Even Feng Shang and Quang Wang, who had a slightly better relationship with Lu Yin, did not take the initiative to contact him due to pressure from their sections. Everyone was waiting for Night King Zhenwu, and many people were already complaining, but no one dared to voice their complaints. Lu Yin looked at the distant nightless city, and his gaze focused in one direction. There he saw Night King Zhenwu's rune lines. However, the man did not move and remained in his original position. As for the other 10 arbiters, he had yet to see them. Could it be that the 10 arbiters were meeting somewhere else? 7th bro, have you heard of the legend of the Night Watch Pavilion? The monkey suddenly asked. Lu Yin was puzzled. What legend? The monkey was pleased. The 99th level of the Night Watch Pavilion. Rumor has it that when the first Night King ascended to the top, he transformed himself into the 100th level and ruled over the world. It was also from then on that the Day-Night clan became the strongest clan in the Innerverse, and the Night Watch Pavilion became famous overnight. Lu Yin looked up. There was actually such a legend. He looked at Qing Longlong. Miss, did Night King Zhenwu ascend to the top of the Night Watch Pavilion? Qing Longlong answered. No, he reached the 99th level, but he was unable to reach the top. Lu Yin nodded. Thank you. He then walked towards the higher levels. Since Night King Zhenwu did not want to come out, then he would force him. One could not be passive, he had to take the initiative. Many people noticed Lu Yin's movement, and they all wondered why he was still climbing upwards. Don't tell me he wants to climb to the top of the Night Guardian Pavilion? Someone guessed. The others sneered. How is that possible? The Night Vigil Pavilion is the Night King clan's place of honor, and no outsider has ever tried to climb to the top. Isn't that just challenging the Day-Night clan? As soon as he said this, everyone fell silent. That was Lu Yin. What wouldn't he do? In the distance, Night King Zhenwu had been keeping an eye on Lu Yin the entire time. When he saw that Lu Yin was actually trying to climb to the top of the Vigil Pavilion, his gaze turned cold like never before. Lu Yin actually wanted to ascend to the top of the Vigil Pavilion. If the Vigil Pavilion allowed an outsider to reach the top, even if it was only the 99th level, it would be a humiliation to the Day-Night clan, and it would be unacceptable. Lu Yin didn't care about what the Day-Night clan thought, as he had already become mortal enemies with the Day-Night clan. He easily reached the 97th level and then moved on to the 98th level. Within the Night Vigil Pavilion, when Qianer and the rest sighed in amazement. Lu Yin really deserved to be provoked for no reason, and he was always looking for trouble wherever he went. This was truly challenging the Day-Night clan's bottom line. Many of the Day-Night clan members angrily shouted and threatened Lu Yin to stop climbing. Since ancient times, countless elite geniuses had been invited to the Day-Night banquet, and there was no lack of people who held grudges against the Day-Night clan. However, no one dared to behave atrociously here no matter how bold they were. This was Night King Planet, the Day-Night clan's territory. Anyone who dared to behave atrociously would be courting death. However, they had met Lu Yin, who had already reached the 98th level and was moving on to the 99th without any hesitation. He had no intention of stopping at all. Night King Zhenwu stood up and headed towards the night vigil pavilion in a flash, transforming into a beam of light that headed straight for the top level. By the time Night King Zhenwu appeared on the 98th level, Lu Yin had already reached the staircase that led to the 99th level. He could feel a rather terrifying obstructive force, and if his power level was calculated, it was definitely not lower than 250,000. Who in the younger generation could surpass that? Only the 10 arbiters. Throughout history, the birth of the 10 arbiters had been very strange, and there had never been a single era where so many top geniuses had gathered. Only the 10 arbiters had been able to reach the 99th level. Night King Zhenwu and Lu Yin both reached the 98th level, and the entire night vigil pavilion fell silent as everyone watched. Lu Yin stood in front of the obstructive force, but he did not turn around. Long time no see, Arbiter Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu's gaze was icy. Brother Lu, I didn't expect to see you again so soon after we parted in the Immerse. Yes, a year. It's been a whole year. A year ago around this time we were still on the platform, Lu Yin said calmly, and it was impossible to tell if he was happy, angry or sad. Night King Zhenwu's eyes narrowed. Since Brother Lu remembers it so clearly, then you should also remember what I said to you back then. What I said back then is still valid. Lu Yin smiled. Brother Zhenwu should also remember what I said back then. I did what you couldn't do. Night King Zhenwu's gaze was bone-chilling. Back then he had wanted to rope Lu Yin in by promising to help him recover a few weaves, but Lu Yin's condition was to unify the Outerverse. In Night King Zhenwu's eyes that was a fantasy, but who would have known that Lu Yin had already unified half of the Outerverse by then? This was a humiliation to Night King Zhenwu, as he had never been humiliated like this before. Even now he could still remember Lu Yin's expression when he had spoken, and that mockery had filled him with hatred. You really don't have a good memory. You've provoked me time and time again, Night King Zhenwu said coldly. Lu Yin's lips curled up and his smile grew even wider. I don't plan on provoking anyone. I'm just here to return something and enjoy the scenery of Nightless City while I'm at it. He then raised his foot and took a step forward towards the 99th level. Night King Zhenwu's eyes went wide and he immediately appeared beside Lu Yin. Everyone held their breaths. Were they going to fight? The Night King banquet had been held countless times, but no one had ever tried to climb to the top of the Vigil Pavilion in front of a Night King clan descendant. Everyone was excited. Lu Yin's battle with the Divine Fist had not been that long ago, and now he was facing off against Arbiter Zhenwu again. They were both from the younger generation and this kind of battle was the pinnacle. Unfortunately, the crowd was disappointed as Night King Zhenwu did not plan on attacking Lu Yin, at least not yet. He also took a step forward and was about to step onto the 99th level. Lu Yin had thought that Night King Zhenwu would not be able to hold back and attack him, but he had actually held back. This made Lu Yin's heart sink as something was wrong. He could not figure out what Night King Zhenwu was waiting for. Did he really want to hold the Night King banquet? Did he not want to embarrass the Night King clan? No matter what, Lu Yin endured a great deal of pressure as he stepped onto the 99th level at the same time as Night King Zhenwu. The 99th level was theoretically the top level of the Vigil Pavilion. From here one could see the entire Evernight City, and it felt as if one could pierce through Night King Planet with just a lift of their hand. This was the highest point on Night King Planet, and it allowed one to trample the universe's younger elites beneath their feet. Brother Lu, you're one of the few people who has been able to step onto the 99th level in countless years. Night King Zhenwu smiled at Lu Yin, but there was no trace of anger on his face. It was as if what had just happened had been an illusion. Lu Yin remained calm. I have to thank Brother Zhenwu for being merciful and not attacking me. The Night King banquet is not being held in the Vigil Pavilion. Brother Lu, please, Night King Zhenwu said politely. Lu Yin looked at him and then into Night King Zhenwu's deep eyes. He then asked, I wonder if it's possible to climb one more level. Night King Zhenwu's pupils shrank, and he stared at Lu Yin with a solemn expression. Brother Lu, are you joking? Lu Yin sighed. Evernight City's scenery is boundless, and this level isn't high enough. I want to experience the same scenery as the first Night King and experience what it feels like to be the ruler of the world. No member of the Day-Night clan would tolerate Lu Yin's actions, as he actually wanted to climb to the top of the Vigil Pavilion. This was an honor that only the first Night King could achieve. During that era, the first Night King had been unrivaled among his peers. He had been truly invincible and he had fought for an entire era. He had spread the Day-Night clan's domineering aura to every corner of the universe. During that era, the first Night King had held a Night King banquet, and all of the universe's younger elites had been trampled beneath his feet. Ever since then, no one from the Day-Night clan had been able to achieve such a glorious moment until Night King Zhenwu's generation. Night King Zhenwu considered himself to be on par with the first Night King when he was young, and he was also the Day-Night clan member who had the highest chance of ascending to the top of the Vigil Pavilion. He had already planned to do so during this Night King banquet, and he wanted to trample all of these people beneath his feet. However, he had not expected Lu Yin to have such plans as well. He had expected Lu Yin to become enemies with the Day-Night clan, and he had also expected Lu Yin to do something that would infuriate the Day-Night clan. However, he had never expected Lu Yin to set his sights on the Vigil Pavilion. No matter how patient Night King Zhenwu was, his expression changed at this moment. "Brother Lu, it looks like you've forgotten why you came to the Day-Night clan." Lu Yin smiled. "I didn't forget. Return the inheritance stone. Night King Yuanjing promised that as long as I returned the stone, you would withdraw your charges, right?" Night King Zhenwu's eyes narrowed. "That's on the premise that you don't do anything that infuriates the Day-Night clan. Does Brother Zhenwu not want me to ascend to the top of the Vigil Pavilion? Or does Brother Zhenwu think that I can ascend to the top?" Lu Yin's voice was very loud and the entire Vigil Pavilion could hear him. Even Nightless City could hear him. He and Night King Zhenwu were mortal enemies, so there was no need for him to show any mercy. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. All of the Day-Night clan members were furious and many cursed out loud. Night Queen Yanqing's expression changed. Lu Yin was challenging the Day-Night clan's dignity. Zhanlong Day-Night clenched his fists. Although he did not like the Night King bloodline, allowing an outsider to ascend to the top of the Vigil Pavilion would be a blow to the entire Day-Night clan's dignity. Not only were the Day-Night clan members enraged, but the members of the powers that were on good terms with the Day-Night clan as well, such as Sun Jiong and Avery. Starsabil had already arrived at the Vigil Pavilion and was quietly standing in a corner, looking at Nightless City. No one knew what she was thinking. Night King Zhenwu and Lu Yin looked at each other, their eyes filled with rage. Lu Yin smirked and slowly walked past Night King Zhenwu, heading towards the top of the Vigil Pavilion. He wanted to infuriate Night King Zhenwu, and the bottom line of Night King Zhenwu's tolerance would determine how much enmity he would receive today. Chapter 1066. There was only a thin barrier between the 99th level and the top. It seemed weak, but it was precisely because of this barrier that no one besides the first Night King had ever been able to reach the top. Night King Zhenwu did not stop Lu Yin even when he reached the barrier. Lu Yin's eyes flashed and he raised a hand to touch the barrier. The moment he touched it, Night King Zhenwu also arrived and attempted to pass through the barrier. The two touched it at the same time. The screen of light was like a sharp blade that transformed into a boundless storm of spiritual force that recklessly swept out, attempting to slice Lu Yin's entire body apart. The spiritual force exploded in his mind like thunder, and Lu Yin groaned as blood flowed out of his ears. His pupils dilated as he was unable to withstand the attack. This was the power that had isolated countless geniuses from the Day-Night clan, and even Night King Zhenwu had failed to succeed in his previous attempt. Although Lu Yin's spiritual force was boundless, it was only at the level of the 10 arbiters. He was still far from Night King Zhenwu, who specialized in spiritual force, let alone the first Night King who had silenced an entire era. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for him to pass through the barrier and reach the top. However, he had an ultimate technique that was linked to spiritual force. Lu Yin's first thought was the Stonewall scriptures, but no matter what, he had to memorize them. Half of Night King Zhenwu's body passed through the barrier. He was also bleeding from his ears, but he was very steady as he walked up step by step. He knew that the first Night King was extremely powerful and had led the Day-Night clan to prosperity, but Night King Zhenwu was not weak either. The 10 arbiters were monsters that had never appeared in any era, and even the first Night King had not been able to suppress Night King Zhenwu. If the other 9 had not existed in this era, then Night King Zhenwu would definitely have been able to recreate the glory of the first Night King. If the first Night King could reach the top, then Night King Zhenwu could as well. As for Lu Yin, Night King Zhenwu glanced at him with disdain. An outsider actually dared to dream of reaching the top? What a joke. Night King Zhenwu acknowledged Lu Yin's battle prowess, but in the Day-Night clan, spiritual force was what mattered. Among the 10 arbiters, no one could compare to Night King Zhenwu in terms of spiritual force. The people who were originally in the Night Vigil Pavilion had already walked out. They were 100 meters away from the Night Vigil Pavilion and looked at the top, watching the 2 of them reach the top. When they saw Night King Zhenwu steadily climb up while Lu Yin stopped with blood dripping from both of his ears, many mocked him. He thinks that he's invincible just because he defeated the Divine Fist. The 10 arbiters all have their own strengths, and the Day-Night clan specializes in spiritual force attacks. Ascending to the top of the Vigil Pavilion must have something to do with spiritual force. This Lu Yin is too full of himself. You really think you can reach the top of the Night Guardian Pavilion? You're courting death. He's really unlucky this time. Not only is he unable to ascend to the top of the Vigil Pavilion, but he's also become a laughingstock. He's also completely offended the Day-Night clan. From now on he can only stay in the Outerverse. The Outerverse isn't safe either. Do you really think that you'll have a high status just because you've unified the Outerverse? From the Innerverse perspective, the Outerverse is just a resource field. At this moment, it wasn't just the Vigil Pavilion that was looking over. The entire Nightless City was looking over, including the people who had been hired by the Day-Night clan to serve the city. For example, the middle-aged cultivator who had been cooking the fruit fish as well as the chattering girls. Flowers danced in the air and emeralds vied with one another. Nightless City had brought in the best performers from the Day-Night flow zone, and they all looked over at the Vigil Pavilion from among the thousands of flowers with a bewitching smile on their faces. He's Lu Yin. He's just so. If Lu Yin had really stopped moving forward, then he would have become the biggest laughingstock of this banquet. However, since Lu Yin dared to do such a thing, he naturally had the confidence to do so. With the Stonewall Scriptures, he was the Day-Night clan's greatest nemesis. Night King Zhenwu walked up once more. Although he was moving slowly, he was still very steady. He was already half a body taller than Lu Yin and he looked down from above. His gaze was arrogant, calm, confident and contemptuous. At this moment, Lu Yin suddenly looked at Night King Zhenwu and smiled. He then took a step forward and stood at the same level as Night King Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu didn't even have time to react and he just stared at Lu Yin in a daze. His gaze went from looking down to being at the same level in an instant. Before anyone else could react, Lu Yin had already caught up to Night King Zhenwu. They didn't have much time to think as Lu Yin took another step forward and surpassed Night King Zhenwu by half a body's length. At this moment, everyone was stunned and they all stared blankly at Lu Yin. Night King Zhenwu was similarly stunned. Throughout his decades of cultivation, he had never encountered such a situation before. At his level, it was impossible for a powerhouse of the same level to easily surpass him. But today such a situation had happened and it had caught him off guard. Lu Yin's lips curled up into a smile, and he looked at Night King Zhenwu with disdain, arrogance and contempt. Night King Zhenwu's pupils shrank, and an indescribable fury rose from his heart. Below him many Day-Night clan members roared, "Lu Yin, come down! Lu Yin, how dare you? Get down here! Lu Yin, my Day-Night clan will exterminate your entire family. You're not allowed to climb up. Lu Yin, come down immediately." No matter how angry these people were or how much they threatened him, Lu Yin had already surpassed Night King Zhenwu and was only one step away from the top of the Night Vigil Pavilion. On Night King Planet, someone opened their eyes and a dignified gaze traversed the planet to look at Lu Yin at the top of the Night Vigil Pavilion. A formless pressure descended from the void, causing the void to become unstable. Lu Yin raised his head and looked to the east of Night King Planet. The Day-Night feast is about to begin. Senior, do you want to join us? Below him the crowd looked to the east. Senior. No one was stupid and the meaning behind Lu Yin's words was clear. A senior from the Night King clan had interfered and was trying to prevent him from ascending to the top of the Night Vigil Pavilion. In the east of Night King Planet, an old man's gaze turned cold, but he obediently retracted his pressure. The day-night feast was only held for the younger generation, and its purpose was to allow the day-night clan to establish good relations with the outside world. If this old man interfered and word spread, the day-night feast's reputation would be ruined, and the consequences would not be any better than Lu Yin ascending to the top of the night vigil pavilion. He could only hope that Night King Zhenwu would work harder and surpass Lu Yin to ascend to the top of the night vigil pavilion. That way, even if Lu Yin ascended to the top, the day-night clan's reputation would be preserved. As for this junior, he would not be able to leave alive. Night King Zhenwu's face flushed red, and he took a step forward so that he was at eye level with Lu Yin. His gaze was filled with malevolence and murderous intent. Lu Yin took a deep breath and leaped up. Under everyone's shocked gazes, he ascended to the top of the night vigil pavilion. He stood alone at the top of the night vigil pavilion and looked down at Night King City, Evernight City, Night King Planet, Night King Zhenwu, and all of the Night King clan's experts who were cultivating on Night King Planet. At this moment, countless people's minds buzzed as they were witnessing history. Back when the first Night King had ascended to the top of the night vigil pavilion, he had trampled over the universe's elites and ruled over the world. That history had been viewed as a humiliation by the Innerverse's great powers, and their ancestors from the same generation as the first Night King had been treated as stepping stones. But now Lu Yin had ascended to the top of the night vigil pavilion, and they had also become stepping stones that would be recorded in history. The most humiliating person in history was none other than Night King Zhenwu. An outsider like Lu Yin had beaten him to the top of the night vigil pavilion, and Lu Yin had dominated the entire Night King clan. Night King Planet rumbled as if it had felt humiliated. The older powerhouses who lived in seclusion on Night King Planet were furious. Below the night vigil pavilion, the Day-Night clan members trembled with rage and some even vomited blood. Night King Zhenwu really did vomit blood, but he bit his lip and allowed the blood to drip onto the 99th floor of the night vigil pavilion. This blood was a record of the humiliation he had suffered. This is the scene that the first Night King once saw, Lu Yin muttered to himself. He had forgotten about Night King Zhenwu and everything else around him. His eyes only saw the scenery of Night King Planet, and he truly was above the entire planet. Night King City was only the size of a palm, and Evernight City was only a square inch of land. A breath of air rose from Lu Yin's heart, and he felt an unprecedented carefree feeling. This feeling of being above all living beings formed a breath of air, and his battle force unconsciously appeared on the surface of his body. Originally, his 9-lined battle force had covered his entire body with purplish-red veins and red stripes, but as this breath of air rose from his heart, the red stripes actually began to show traces of gold. These traces of gold were very unremarkable, and even Lu Yin himself did not notice them. These traces of gold gradually expanded as if they were about to cover the red stripes. At that moment, Night King Zhenwu leapt out and ascended to the top of the night vigil pavilion. Lu Yin's originally lofty thoughts were disrupted, and that trace of gold abruptly disappeared as if it had never appeared. Night King Zhenwu quietly stood by Lu Yin's side, and his gaze had changed from extreme rage to calm. It was as if Lu Yin had never existed. Night King Zhenwu's current state shocked Lu Yin. Congratulations on becoming the second person from the Day-Night clan to ascend to the top of the night vigil pavilion. Night King Zhenwu looked at Lu Yin with a calm gaze, but then a smile appeared on his face. It was a smile that was bone-chilling. I congratulate you as well for becoming the first outsider in the universe to ascend to the top of the night vigil pavilion. Lu Yin and Night King Zhenwu exchanged glances. Below, many Day-Night clan members shouted angrily, begging Night King Zhenwu to kill Lu Yin. The Day-Night clan had always been tyrannical, and they were not in a hurry to retrieve their inheritance stones after losing them. They were confident that no one in the universe would dare to covet their inheritance stones. How could such a tyrannical clan endure being humiliated by Lu Yin? Night King Zhenwu calmly turned around and looked down. Everyone, the purpose of the Day-Night feast is to allow the younger generation of cultivators to interact with each other and make friends. My Day-Night clan is hosting the Day-Night feast, so anyone who has the ability can do so. Brother Lu has become the first person in the universe outside of my Day-Night clan to ascend to the top of the night vigil pavilion. I would like to congratulate Brother Lu. The Day-Night clan members all glared at Lu Yin with murderous gazes. No matter what the others thought of Lu Yin, There was only admiration in their eyes. Qing Longlong and the others also admired Lu Yin. The closer they got to that position, the more they understood how difficult it was. Lu Yin had actually reached the top of the Night Vigil Pavilion before Night King Jinwu. Not only had he humiliated the Day-Night clan, but he had also shown everyone how terrifying he was. Ling Ke laughed heartily. Although he was not happy with Lu Yin's glory, he was delighted to see Night King Jinwu's current state. This guy could have reached the top of the Night Vigil Pavilion long ago, but he had wanted to wait until the Day-Night Feast to reach the top. He had wanted to trample all of them beneath his feet, but Lu Yin had beaten him to it. It was too pathetic. Suddenly Ling Ke thought of something. Could that guy from the Spirit Palace not have come because of this? If he had come, then he would have been trampled by Night King Jinwu. If he had not come, then even if Night King Jinwu reached the top of the Night Vigil Pavilion, it would have nothing to do with them. The 10 arbiters were all shrewd people. Thank you, brothers, for your tips. Chapter 1067. Unfortunately, the rest of the 10 arbiters did not expect Lu Yin to reach the top of the Vigil Pavilion before Night King Jinwu. Ling Ke sighed. Not everyone is as heartless as Lu Yin. He's offending the Day-Night clan to the point of death. Brother Lu, you're on your own now. The moment Lu Yin stepped into Evernight City, the day feast had already begun. Nightless City and the Vigil Pavilion were both part of the day feast. After the Vigil Pavilion, Lu Yin had to change locations. That was the Night Book Pavilion, where the Day-Night clan's countless years of collection of battle techniques and cultivation techniques were stored. It was open for everyone to peruse, and there was also good wine and food to accompany it. The most noteworthy thing was that every day feast, the organizer would clear up any doubts that the attendees had in the Night Book Pavilion. If there was anything that they did not understand about a battle technique or cultivation technique, they could ask about it. This was a display of the Day-Night clan's leadership of the younger generation. Many people would submit to the Day-Night clan's leadership on this day, and this had been the case for many generations. This was the essence of the day feast, and the Day-Night clan had relied on it to attract many young elites to their side. Lu Yin had shown off in the Vigil Pavilion, but no one paid him any attention. He had offended the Day-Night clan too much, and before the situation was clear, no one dared to take the initiative to express goodwill. Many people guessed that he would not be able to leave the Day-Night flow zone alive. Lu Yin was still very interested in the Night Book Pavilion, as the Day-Night clan's countless years of accumulation were not for show. Even after the 6th mainland's invasion, Night King Planet had not been harmed. There were no less than 10 million books in the Night Book Pavilion, which meant that there were at least 10 million battle techniques and cultivation techniques. Although these might not be the best, the sheer number of books was enough to shock many people. The Night Book Pavilion was very large, and no one felt crowded as they shuttled through it. Lu Yin met Feng Shang, the former student leader of Astral 8. Feng Shang looked at Lu Yin with a much more distant gaze than before, as the two had been on good terms in the past. You've changed so much in the past few years, Feng Shang sighed. Lu Yin replied, I was forced. It's normal. Feng Shang sighed. The Outerverse has never been unified in all these years. You should know why, so be careful. Does the Feng family have any thoughts? Lu Yin asked. Feng Shang shook his head. The Tempest flow zone is just a small flow zone, so they don't have any thoughts. You should be more concerned about the 8 flow zones. Thank you, Lu Yin said. After Feng Shang left, Lu Yin bumped into Wen Qian'er. He wasn't familiar with Wen Qian'er and hadn't interacted much with her. However, Wen Qian'er had a good relationship with Shiyu and had gone through a lot on planet Pyrolite. Brother Lu, I support you, Wen Qian'er encouraged. Lu Yin laughed. When Sansi didn't come? Wen Qian'er shook her head. I don't know. Do you know Wen Zhaoqing? Wen Qian'er was puzzled. How does Brother Lu know the elder? It was a coincidence. Lu Yin did not elaborate further. The spear that the Sun family had asked for had shattered, and a beast skin had dropped out. On it was a list of names that the Sun family had colluded with the technocracy, and the technocracy had given the Sun family a list of people that they could cooperate with. These people were all traitors of the human domain, and Wen Zhaoqing was one of them. The elder has always been in seclusion in the family and hasn't come out for hundreds of years. Brother Lu, do you know any elders? Wen Qian'er asked. She was curious as Lu Yin shouldn't have heard of Wen Zhaoqing's name. Even she had never met this elder and had only heard of him once. No one in the family knew who he was. Lu Yin did not answer and he looked past Wen Qian'er to see Starsabil. "Brother Lu, we meet again." Starsabil smiled. Wen Qian'er pouted and left. Lu Yin looked at Starsabil with a deep gaze. "I never thought that you would side with Night King Zhenwu." Starsabil smiled. "He stole the general appointing platform and can inherit the Star Tower alone. He's one of the future 5 astral children, and he also has the Day-Night clan and the entire Day-Night flow zone. Why wouldn't I help him?" Lu Yin replied, "Everyone has their own ambitions." He then looked at Starsabil. "The Starsabil sect claims to be able to divine the past and the future. Then have you ever divined Night King Zhenwu's future?" "Of course. That's why I'm helping him." Starsabil was confident. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. "Seventh bro, this bitch is just trying to scare you. Don't be scared by her. Aside from the Imperial Tutor Skymender, no one else can truly predict the future." The monkey shouted. Lu Yin turned around and left as he had nothing to say to this woman. The Starsabil sect seemed to be detached from worldly affairs, but if they were, then they would not have the top 100 rankings. Their goal seemed to be to incite the younger generation to compete with each other. Starsabil seemed to be helping Night King Zhenwu, but who knew what her true intentions were? In any case, Lu Yin did not believe that this woman would actually help someone. This sort of person was the best at disguising herself. In the distance, Night King Zhenwu was explaining battle techniques to a youth. The youth's eyes lit up as he listened and he repeatedly bowed to Night King Zhenwu. "Thank you, Arbiter Zhenwu." "Thank you." Night King Zhenwu nodded reservedly. Not long after, another person went forward to ask for guidance. The 10 arbiters were high and mighty, and they would only appear at a day-night banquet that was hosted by one of them. This sort of opportunity was something that many people could only hope for. Although Night King Zhenwu was explaining things to others, his attention never left Lu Yin. Lu Yin was still reading through the battle technique manual when Ling Ke walked over. "What did Starsabil say to you?" Lu Yin casually answered, "Nothing." "You don't believe me. Didn't you ask her if Night King Zhenwu obtained it?" Ling Ke winked. Lu Yin pursed his lips. Casanova arrived. "Brother Lu, I heard that you returned true insight." Lu Yin nodded. Ling Ke was unhappy and he looked at Casanova. "Brother, do you understand that first come, first served? I started chatting with Brother Lu first." "Wait a moment." Casanova looked at Ling Quebec. "Do you have any pretty sisters in your family?" Ling Ke blinked. "Yes, what about it?" "Introduce them to me and I won't beat you up," Casanova said as this was his reasoning. Lu Yin raised a brow and the first thing he thought of was the Spirit Palace. Casanova's words were provocative, and anyone who heard them would be angry. However, Ling Ke's expression was strange as he had also thought of the Spirit Palace. He then enthusiastically pulled Casanova away. "Brother, let's go. I'll introduce them to you. Listen to me, they're definitely pretty and they're the type to be a good wife and mother." "You can't." Casanova left with him as he liked pretty girls. Lu Yin looked at Casanova sympathetically. If Casanova knew that Ling Ke was introducing him to the White Knight of the 10 Arbiters, he might have fainted from shock. Just as Casanova left, Qing Longlong arrived. Lu Yin was curious. "What's your relationship with Casanova?" "Brother and sister," Qing Longlong coldly replied. Lu Yin understood. She was right as not many people had a surname like Qing. Qing Longlong said, "You're welcome to the Gu Flow Zone to play. I can give you some fun pets." Lu Yin nodded and watched her leave. He recalled his understanding of the Gu Flow Zone and felt a chill run down his spine. The Gu Flow Zone was one of the 8 great flow zones, but it never interacted with the outside world. It was not easy for outsiders to enter, as the space inside was filled with poisonous insects and poisonous gas. Even space-exploring powerhouses could die if they were not careful. The pets that Qing Longlong was referring to should be poisonous insects. Lu Yin raised his hand and took out a book that recorded some ancient history. Just as he was engrossed in reading, he heard a melodious song. He paused and looked into the distance. The song was coming from that direction and it spread throughout the entire Nightbook Pavilion. The song was beautiful, and Lu Yin swore that he had never heard such a beautiful voice before. It was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. More importantly, this song calmed his mind and made him feel as if he was standing aloof from worldly affairs. The dark thoughts of revenge and slaughter that had been circling in his mind gradually faded away. Lu Yin was shocked. What kind of song was this? This song is so beautiful. Where did it come from? It doesn't sound like a single person singing. Could it be from the Soul Dream tribe? Wrong, it's from the Fireplume tribe. The Fireplume tribe? Someone exclaimed, clearly having heard of them before. It's rumored that the Fireplume tribe was exterminated a long time ago, but they still exist. Are they being raised in captivity by the Day-Night clan? Lu Yin finally remembered. The Fireplume tribe. That's right, only the Fireplume tribe had such a song. It was a song that could cleanse one's soul, and it was a tribe that possessed true kindness and beauty. It was also the tribe that Ellen Gale had chosen to blind herself in order to save Night King Zhenwu's soul. Lu Yin had been greatly shocked by Ellen Gale's diary. Now he was very close to the Fireplume tribe and he did not know if Ellen Gale was still alive. He had never thought that there would be such a kind race in the universe, but now that he heard this song he believed it. This song was pure and flawless, and it was so beautiful that it could enchant one's heart. Night King Zhenwu smiled. The Fireplume tribe was his pride, and he was the one who had single-handedly saved them. He had to listen to their songs every day, and even if his voice became hoarse or useless he still wanted to hear it. The Fireplume tribe was his toy, and it was something that he could flaunt to the outside world. The Fireplume tribe's song was beautiful and pleasant, and it made it impossible for anyone to have any distracting thoughts. As for Night King Zhenwu, who controlled the Fireplume tribe, the crowd naturally admired him even more. A figure entered the Night Book Pavilion and Lu Yin sensed it. He turned around and saw Zhou Day-Night. She had finally arrived. The moment Zhou Day-Night entered the Night Book Pavilion, she looked up and coincidentally met Lu Yin's gaze. Her gaze was calm, and it was as if she did not recognize him. Lu Yin frowned and wanted to talk to her, but Night Queen Yanqing stepped forward and blocked Lu Yin as she looked at Night King Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu waved at Zhou Day-Night. Zhou Day-Night calmly walked over. A normal member of the Day-Night clan would not attract any attention. Night King Zhenwu exchanged a few words with Zhou Day-Night before being asked for advice by the others. Zhou Day-Night quietly stood behind Night King Zhenwu. Lu Yin walked over as he recalled what Night King Zhenwu had said to him when he had defeated Lan Si. Those things would cause Zhou Day-Night to fall into the deepest despair, and he would not allow that to happen. Night Queen Yanqing blocked Lu Yin's path. "Brother Lu, let's chat." Lu Yin frowned. "I'm not free." He walked past Night Queen Yanqing and walked towards Zhou Day-Night. "Brother Lu, be careful with your words. Otherwise you'll know what will happen," Night Queen Yanqing threatened in a low voice. Lu Yin's eyes turned cold and he paused for a moment before continuing to walk forward. Soon Lu Yin arrived in front of Zhou Day-Night. Zhou Day-Night looked at him coldly. "Please keep your distance." She then walked behind Night King Zhenwu. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Chapter 1068. Night King Zhenwu turned around and looked at Lu Yin in astonishment. "What's the matter, Brother Lu?" Lu Yin ignored Night King Zhenwu and only looked at Zhou Day-Night. "I want to talk to you." Zhou Day-Night indifferently replied, "I don't know you." Lu Yin's fingers twitched as he used his star energy to form a voice to speak, but he was interrupted by Night King Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu smiled. "Brother Lu, if you have something to say, just say it." Lu Yin looked at Zhou Day-Night and wanted to say something, but then he remembered Night Queen Yanqing's words. "Don't believe him." Zhou Day-Night remained calm. Night King Zhenwu was amused. "What do you mean by that, Brother Lu?" "Lu Yin, Arbiter Zhenwu is speaking to you. You're being too presumptuous." A Day-Night clansman shouted at Lu Yin. Many others agreed. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. "Shut up." His voice swept through the area and shook the entire Night Book Pavilion. Night King Zhenwu's face sank. "Brother Lu, I respect you as a genius, so I won't fuss over your rudeness. However, this is not a reason for you to act presumptuously in the Night Book Pavilion. Brother, Lu Yin has repeatedly caused trouble at the Day-Night banquets. Please take action and teach him the rules." A Day-Night clansman shouted. "Please take action and teach Lu Yin a lesson." Another Day-Night clansman spoke up. Night King Zhenwu raised a hand to silence the crowd. He looked at Lu Yin and then at Zhou Day-Night. I remember now. During the battle on planet Pyrolite, Brother Lu saved this Day-Night clan sister of mine. He then stared at Zhou Day-Night sternly. Brother Lu saved you, so how can you not recognize him? Won't the rest of the universe laugh at our Day-Night clan for not knowing how to repay favors? Go toast Brother Lu. He then passed a cup of wine to Zhou Day-Night. Zhou Day-Night accepted it and calmly walked towards Lu Yin. Brother Lu, I'm sorry. I'll never forget your kindness. Lu Yin looked at Zhou Day-Night. Have you lost your memories? Zhou Day-Night repeated, Brother Lu, I'm sorry. I'll never forget your kindness. Lu Yin stared at her in a daze, not understanding what had just happened to her. Night King Zhenwu walked behind Zhou Day-Night and smiled at Lu Yin. At the same time he placed a hand on Zhou Day-Night's shoulder. Brother Lu, my clan sister has a bad memory. Please forgive her. Lu Yin looked at Zhou Day-Night's eyes and then at Night King Zhenwu. He did not know if Zhou Day-Night had lost her memories or something else, but she was currently under Night King Zhenwu's control. Even if he told her, it would be useless as it would only cause Night King Zhenwu to act first. Lu Yin hesitated for a moment before taking the cup and downing it in one gulp. Night King Zhenwu smiled. Brother Lu is magnanimous. Lu Yin watched as Zhou Day-Night followed Night King Zhenwu into the distance, and his thoughts became complicated. Seventh bro, this is the Day-Night clan's territory. There's obviously something wrong with Zhou Day-Night, so there's no point in saying anything. Just bear with it, the monkey advised. At Lu Yin's side, Night Queen Yanqing walked over. You're still lacking if you want to overturn the Day-Night clan. That woman will forever be eldest brother's puppet, and she's something he can show off to the outside world. Is the entire Day-Night clan like this, or is it just the Night King bloodline? Lu Yin asked calmly. Night Queen Yanqing's expression changed, but she did not answer and simply walked away. At this moment Night King Zhenwu stood at the highest point with a smile on his face. He said to everyone, Everyone, today isn't just an opportunity for me to hold a day-night banquet and get to know the elites of the various clans. There's also an important announcement that will affect the Day-Night clan, the Day-Night flow zone, and even the Innerverse and Outerverse. Everyone looked at Night King Zhenwu and listened in silence. Everyone, please follow me to the Eternal Night Drill Grounds, Night King Zhenwu said, and then led the Day-Night clan members away. The rest hurriedly followed him. The Eternal Night Drill Grounds were located to the west of Evernight City, and it was the largest martial arts arena in the city. The grounds were sturdy, and the void had been reinforced to the point that even a hunter would not be able to tear it apart. The entire drill grounds were not flat ground and there were mountains and rivers. There was also a giant statue erected there, which was the statue of the first Night King. Usually, when a day-night banquet was held, most people would first go to the Eternal Night Drill Grounds to see the first Night King. Some people would go there to worship him, while others would use this opportunity to motivate themselves. At this moment, there were tens of thousands of people waiting on the large flat ground beside the river in the Eternal Night Drill Grounds. They all had confused expressions and their eyes were filled with panic. When Zhou Day-Night saw these people, she became excited. These people were from the Day King bloodline and her parents were probably among them. Lu Yin looked at the statue of the first Night King that stood tall in a nearby mountain range. This person was the one who had divided the Day-Night clan's Night King bloodline and suppressed the entire universe, forming the famous tyrannical clan. This person had contributed greatly to the Day-Night clan, but that might not be the case for the entire universe. If this person had still been alive, then the Day-Night clan would have been even more tyrannical and insufferably arrogant. Not far from Lu Yin, Starsabil was also looking at the statue of the first Night King, but no one knew what she was thinking. The first Night King was too distant from them, as he was a character from ancient times. His battle prowess was unimaginable. Night King Zhenwu stood in front of the first Night King's statue and faced the crowd. When the crowd saw him, they also saw the first Night King. I believe that everyone knows that the Day-Night clan has had two main branches since ancient times, the Night King bloodline and the Day King bloodline. Ever since the Day King bloodline's actions were too extreme and provoked the Innerverse's great powers to encircle and annihilate them, they went completely silent. Many years have passed since then, and today I, Night King Zhenwu, will make the decision to release the Day King bloodline, Night King Zhenwu announced loudly. Everyone was shocked as they all knew of the Day King bloodline's existence. The Day-Night clan's cage technique was specifically targeted at the Day King bloodline. In everyone's opinion, the Day King bloodline would never be able to make a name for themselves, as the Night King bloodline would never give them a chance. However, Night King Zhenwu was actually going to release them. Even those from the Day-Night clan were dumbfounded, let alone those from other clans. Night Queen Yanqing was also shocked as she had not known. Zhanlong Day-Night's pupils shrank and he stared at Night King Zhenwu in disbelief. The rest of the Day-Night and Night Kings were stunned as well. Zhou Day-Night's eyes reddened and she looked at Night King Zhenwu with excitement. Her entire body trembled uncontrollably. This day had finally arrived. Was he going to release the Day King bloodline? Or was he going to announce it in front of everyone? Not only that, but Lu Yin also looked around and saw that there were technological facilities everywhere that were broadcasting everything that was happening. Lu Yin believed that the entire Innerverse 8 major flow zones, including the various smaller flow zones, and even some parts of the Outerverse could all see it. What was Night King Zhenwu doing? It was different from what he had originally said. Since he had announced to the entire universe that he was going to release the Day King bloodline, he could not go back on his word. Ling Ke was speechless. This is heaven-defying. Isn't this guy afraid that the Night King clan's ancestor will jump out of his grave? Heart Phoenix stared blankly at Night King Zhenwu. His family was in the Day-Night flow zone, so he understood the situation between the Night King bloodline and the Day King bloodline very well. This sort of decision could not have been made by the Night King bloodline. What had happened? Had the Day King been revived? When Qian'er tried her best to recall the grudges between the two branches of the Day-Night clan, the more she thought about it, the more she could not see through Night King Zhenwu. What was this person thinking? Starsibyl's eyes flashed as she did not know that Night King Zhenwu would make such a decision at this time. The third Night King had yet to appear, so was it appropriate to release the Day King bloodline at this time? At this moment in outer space, countless people were shaken by Night King Zhenwu's words. Those who did not understand the Day King bloodline were still fine, but those who understood the Day King bloodline felt their hearts sink. The Day-Night clan had 2 royal bloodlines, and the Night King bloodline was already tyrannical enough. If the Day King bloodline was released as well, then the Day-Night clan's strength would immediately soar. They might even surpass the Sword Sect and become the undisputed overlord of the entire Innerverse. Night King Zhenwu was truly bold. In the erudite flow zone at the front gate of the academy, an old man dressed in plain clothes was calmly sweeping the ground. Not too far away, a figure tore through the void and appeared 100 meters away from the old man. The figure slowly bowed. Elder Night King Zhenwu has decided to release the Day King bloodline during the Day-Night banquet. The old man paused and looked up with a rueful expression. With Night King Zhenwu's boldness, the Day-Night clan's future is immeasurable. Elder, what should my Wen family do? The old man muttered to himself for a moment. Let's wait and see. We'll act according to the circumstances. Yes. In the Beast Tamer's flow zone's divine grade hall, a large mountain towered in outer space and covered the entire sky. The mountain had eyes and its name was Baiwan. This mountain had a name, and it was the tamed beast of the divine grade hall's mountain god. The oolong horse trotted through outer space and the person riding it was Zhe Lin, who had been defeated by Lu Yin on planet Pyrolite. He was ranked 67th on the top 100 rankings. What? That junior Night King Zhenwu is willing to release the Day King bloodline? Is that true? The mountain spoke and his words shook the universe. Zhe Lin respectfully replied, "It's absolutely true. The entire universe knows about it and they're all waiting for him to release the Day King bloodline." A mere child actually has such boldness. If he really does release the Day King bloodline, then the 2 royal bloodlines will join forces, and no one in the Innerverse will be able to stop the Day-Night clan. This is going to be troublesome. Hall Master, what should we do? Zhe Lin asked. You still want to ask? Think of a way to kill him. In the future, if you encounter anyone from the Day King bloodline in outer space, kill them if you can. Just don't let anyone know that it was my divine grade hall that did it. Yes. In the first flow zone, the current sect master of the sword sect was Lu Qianjue. In reality, he was not the current sect master but rather the previous sect master. The previous sect master, Lu Qiyu, was not very talented, and his own power level was also insufficient, which had brought shame to the sword sect. However, because he was from the Lu family, he had been promoted to the position of sect master to await Lu Qianjue's awakening. The moment Lu Qianjue awoke would be the moment Lu Qiyu abdicated. The sword sect did not care about Lu Qiyu's whereabouts. They only knew of Lu Qianjue, who was not only the previous sect master, but also the current sect master. He was a peerless powerhouse who could sweep through outer space with his sword. It was precisely because of Lu Qianjue that the sword sect was unquestionably the strongest power in the Innerverse, and it firmly suppressed the Day-Night clan. When he heard that Night King Zhenwu had released the Day King bloodline, Lu Qianjue opened his eyes. His first thought was not that the Day King bloodline had joined forces with the Night King bloodline, but that the Night King bloodline had the ability to suppress the Day King bloodline. How could they suppress the Day King bloodline? As long as there was even the slightest possibility, those old fellows from the Night King bloodline would not allow the Day King bloodline to survive. Now that they had dared to release the Day King bloodline, there could only be one possibility. The Night King bloodline was completely confident. Could it be? Lu Qianjue suddenly thought of something. Pass down the order. Keep an eye on the Day-Night clan. Thank you for your support, brothers. The first volume of the General Appointing Platform is about to end. The next volume, The 5 Sons of the Stars, is about to begin. Chapter 1069. Within the blazing mist flow zone's blaze realm, a scorching sea of flames rose. At the center of the sea of flames, a man was sweating profusely. Not long after, the sea of flames parted and a woman staggered out. Her face was charming and she bore a striking resemblance to Red Lily. Her body was covered in scars, but her face was filled with satisfaction. The man walked out of the sea of flames. His long red hair hung down as he gazed towards the starry river. Sect Master Night King Zhenwu is about to release the White King bloodline, someone reported. The man was the master of the Blaze Realm and he was known as Master Hong. When he heard the report, his expression changed and he thought for a moment before saying, "Pass down the order. Assemble the Blaze Realm's army and await further orders." Yes, sect leader. The Red Sovereign looked at the astral river. Night King Zhenwu had released the Day King bloodline, which meant that the Day-Night clan's strength would increase once again. The Red Sovereign had to rely on this large ship. Once Night King Zhenwu became one of the 5 astral children, he would definitely be able to lead the Day-Night clan into the Neoverse. What the Red Sovereign needed to do was clear out some obstacles for the Day-Night clan, such as the Outerverse Great Eastern Alliance. Although it was just icing on the cake, Red Master was still willing to use this to curry favor with the Day-Night clan and even a junior like Night King Zhenwu. On the other side, the Sylvan Dragon clan's Dragon 1 roared at the sky. It was excited, and as it stared at Night King Zhenwu's heroic figure on the screen, it wished that it could immediately fly over. It had once challenged one of the 10 arbiters and lost. According to the terms of the bet, it should be the mount of that person, and that person was Night King Zhenwu. Back then, Night King Zhenwu had only been a sentinel, but now he was on the verge of becoming one of the 5 astral children. "Dragon 1, go and find your master." A loud voice reverberated in the air. It was none other than the leader of the Sylvan Dragons, the Dragon Master. Dragon 1 kowtowed. "Yes, Patriarch." The Dragon Master's enormous eyes watched Long Yi leave with satisfaction. It hoped that Long Yi would successfully become Night King Zhenwu's mount, which would allow the entire Sylvan Dragon clan to lean towards the Day-Night clan. The Sylvan Dragon clan had betrayed the Astral Beast domain and was not favored by the various great powers of the Innerverse. It had always dreamed of finding a backer, and the Day-Night clan was the best. Night King Zhenwu had released the Day King bloodline, which meant that the Day-Night clan was about to soar. Perhaps this was to pave the way for the 5 astral children, as the Day-Night clan wanted to gather the strength of the entire clan and rush into the Neoverse. They had to seize this opportunity. The Sylvan Dragons had to join the forces of the Neoverse. It was a pity that Long Yi had been sealed in ice, or else the Day-Night clan would have long since relied on the Day-Night clan. However, that did not matter as it was still not too late. Although the Day-Night clan was powerful, the Sylvan Dragons were not weak either, and they were qualified to assist the Day-Night clan. The Gu Flow Zone was one of the 8 great flow zones of the Innerverse. It was vast, but very few people were able to survive in that region of space. This was because there were too many fatal things that ordinary people could not touch. There was only one ruler in the entire Gu Flow Zone, and that was the Divine Gu Dynasty. It controlled the entire Gu Flow Zone, and everyone who lived there belonged to the Divine Gu Dynasty. The current emperor of the Divine Venomous Dynasty was called Young Emperor Qing. He was the father of Qing Longlong, who was ranked 3rd on the top 100 rankings. Qing Longlong was the eldest princess of the Divine Venomous Dynasty. Originally, the Divine Gu Dynasty would not have reacted to any changes in the outside world. Even when the 6th mainland had invaded, the Divine Gu Dynasty had remained as steady as a rock, as this place was not worth invading. However, at this moment news that Night King Zhenwu was going to release the Day King bloodline had spread, and young Emperor Qing could no longer sit still. He did not fear the 6th mainland even if they had many experts. Invading the Gu Flow Zone would not bring him much benefit and he would instead suffer more losses. He was confident that the 6th mainland would be able to settle this debt, so he was not worried. However, the Day-Night clan was different. This clan had existed for countless years, and their history and heritage even surpassed that of the Divine Gu Dynasty. The establishment of the Divine Gu Dynasty seemed to have been related to a certain powerhouse from the Day-Night clan, so young Emperor Qing could not ignore the Day-Night clan's upheaval. Pass down my orders. Raise the Gu Flow Zone's defenses to the highest level. Have Longlong keep an eye on Night King Zhenwu, young Emperor Qing ordered. Suddenly, countless poisonous insects filled the entire Divine Gu Dynasty and spread out in all directions. In the Spirit Seal Flow Zone, the current head of the Lingling clan, Ling Qiu, was wearing armor and a mask. Her appearance was almost identical to Ling Gong's, but it was obvious that she was a woman. This Night King Zhenwu is quite bold. I underestimated him back then and I told Ling Gong to keep an eye on him. He's now the leader of the 10 Arbiters, and he's even released the Day King bloodline to unify the Day-Night clan and become one of the 5 astral children. His future is immeasurable and he's one of the most likely people to reach the progenitor realm, Ling Qiu said. In the Chaos Flow Zone, Chaos God Mountain's master, Zhou, was also watching Night King Zhenwu on his screen. This person was so similar to the first Night King. Zhou had originally not cared about the 10 Arbiters. Although they were the top powerhouses of the younger generation and had monopolized an entire era, they still needed time to mature. If Zhou wanted to, he could have killed the 10 Arbiters, but Night King Zhenwu's decision to release the Day King bloodline made Zhou have a whole new level of respect for this young man. A completely unified Day-Night clan would be completely different from the previous Day-Night clan. This kid will definitely dazzle the 5th mainland in the future and he might even shock the 6th mainland, Zhou muttered to himself as he ordered all the disciples of Chaos God Mountain to watch Night King Zhenwu release the Day King bloodline. Zhou wanted to show these juniors what the true apex was. Within the younger generation, there was no one in the Innerverse or Outerverse who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Night King Zhenwu. In the 8 Great Flow Zones, the Hall of Honor was shaken by the news that Night King Zhenwu was going to release the White King's bloodline. Their impression of Night King Zhenwu instantly rose by several levels. Only by being tolerant and open-minded could one reach a supreme realm. This was a principle that many people understood, but there were very few who could truly achieve it. The release of the Day King bloodline had a huge impact on the Night King bloodline. However, Night King Zhenwu was actually willing to release the Day King bloodline, which showed how magnanimous he was. He had even been able to convince the older generation of the Night King bloodline, which showed how influential he was. This kid had all the qualifications to reach the apex, and his future would be smooth sailing. At this moment, everyone looked at Night King Zhenwu in admiration. Regardless of whether they were his friends or foes, they were all shocked by his decision. Night King Zhenwu's image overlapped with that of the first Night King, and it completely offset the fact that Lu Yin had been the first to reach the peak of the Vigil Pavilion. In the Eternal Night Academy, Night King Zhenwu smiled and extended a hand to Zhou Day Knight. His eyes were filled with encouragement as he said, "Come, I'll help you remove the sealed cage technique." The Fire Plume tribe's song rang out, as if they were cheering for the Day King bloodline. Below, Tens of thousands of people from the Daking bloodline were excited. They had been waiting for this day for too long. They were slaves and had no human rights. Even if they were ordered to die, they could only die. They had never imagined that they would be released one day, and they could not wait to dig out the piece of meat that had been used to release the sealed cage technique. Zhou Xian looked at Night King Jinwu, and her originally uneasy heart calmed down. Even if Night King Jinwu did not keep his word, he would not do so in front of the entire universe. She felt relieved as the Fireplume tribe's song had appeared at the right time. Night King Jinwu held Zhou Xian's hand, and his eyes contained a bone-chilling coldness as well as a deeply hidden mockery. No one noticed except for Lu Yin. He knew of Night King Jinwu's plan, and he did not believe that Night King Jinwu would be willing to release the Daking bloodline. When he saw Night King Jinwu's expression, Lu Yin's expression changed. Zhou Xian placed her right hand on Night King Jinwu's hand, and suddenly Night King Jinwu's expression changed. The hand that had touched Zhou Xian's hand turned pitch black, and a drop of blood dripped onto the ground, corroding it. He kicked Zhou Xian away and bellowed, "You poisoned me." Zhou Xian was kicked dozens of meters away. Her face was pale and there was blood at the corner of her mouth. She looked at Night King Jinwu in confusion. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? Night King Jinwu's angry and disappointed voice roared, "Zhou Xian, why did you plot against me? I already agreed to release the Daking bloodline. Do you not want to see me become one of the 5 children of the stars? Do you hate my Night King bloodline that much?" "Brother." Night Queen Yanqing cried out in alarm, and she rushed over to pick up Night King Jinwu's hand. His right hand had turned pitch black, and it was obvious that he had been poisoned. One by one, the Night King elites rushed out from the crowd, their eyes bloodshot as they tried to kill Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian was completely dumbfounded, and she had no idea what was happening. "Stop!" Night King Jinwu shouted, stopping the Night King bloodline from attacking. He then stared at Zhou Xian. "Why did you plot against me?" Zhou Xian's face turned pale and she shook her head repeatedly. "No, I didn't. I didn't plot against you." Night King Jinwu stared at her coldly. Night Queen Yanqing was furious and she glared at Zhou Xian. "You Daking bloodline are all vile people. Kill her." One of the Night King clansmen impatiently charged towards Zhou Xian. At this moment, Xianlong Daoist appeared in front of Zhou Xian. He looked at Night King Jinwu and anxiously said, "Clan brother, this matter hasn't been fully investigated. Please don't misunderstand." "Misunderstand what?" "The Daking bloodline wants to kill my Night King bloodline's chance of becoming a progenitor. Not only did they betray the Daoist clan, but they also betrayed the 5th mainland and massacred the Daking bloodline." Massacred the Daking bloodline. Massacred the Daking bloodline. No one had expected such a thing to happen. Things had been fine just a moment ago, but now things had turned out this way. Even the experienced leaders of the various large flow zones were at a loss, and they could not figure out what was going on. "Xianlong Daoist, you're also a member of the Daking bloodline. You must die as well." The surrounding Night King clansmen surrounded them, and they all stared at Xianlong Daoist and Zhou Xian with murderous intent. Zhou Xian bit her lip. Others might not know, but she was very clear that she had not plotted against Night King Jinwu. There was only one possibility for this outcome. Night King Jinwu had been plotting against her. Why? The Daking bloodline had clearly been enslaved and controlled for countless years. Their lives and deaths were in the hands of the Night King bloodline, so why would they do such a thing? Zhou Xian's pupils dilated, and she could not figure out why Night King Jinwu would do such a thing. Night King Jinwu stared at Zhou Xian as he slowly approached her. Zhou Xian stared blankly at him. Why would you do such a thing?" Night King Jinwu lowered his head and whispered, "You can only blame yourself for comprehending Night's End, Daybreak. You can only blame yourself for exposing Night's End, Daybreak for an unrelated person. Right, that person has already been poisoned. You were the one who fed him that wine. Have you forgotten?" Zhou Xian's pupils shrank. That wine was poisoned. Chapter 1070. Zhou Xian hurriedly turned to look at the crowd, but just as she was about to shout, Night King Jinwu raised a hand and slapped down. "You deserve to die for betraying the 5th mainland." At that moment the void tore open and Lu Yin walked out. His berserk spiritual force transformed into nightfall and blasted towards Night King Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu's eyes widened and his spiritual force howled out as well. At that moment, with the two at the center, visible ripples of spiritual force spread outwards, sending Zhanlong Day Night and Night Queen Yanqing flying. It also sent the other participants of the banquet flying, and many of them could not withstand the force and vomited blood before fainting. In just one clash of spiritual force, there was no one else within 1,000 meters besides Lu Yin, Night King Zhenwu and Zhou Day Night. The two did not speak, but their spiritual force surged even more, transforming into streaks that swept out in all directions. In the distant crowd, Ling Kei's expression changed. Run! The next moment, spiritual force streaks swept out from beside him, tearing through the void and tearing apart the ground. This was Night King Planet, and it was also the Eternal Night Academy, a place where even hunters could not tear through the void. The clash of spiritual force between the two had surpassed the strength of an enlighter. Wen Qian'er had also narrowly escaped being hit by the shockwaves from the clash of spiritual force. Beside her, the man who had been conversing with her collapsed to the ground. Even if he did not die, he would become an idiot. Star energy exploded in front of Qing Longlong, and she was torn apart by the spiritual force shockwaves. She hurriedly dodged as she panted heavily, almost being hit. Avery had been hit. He was arrogant, and he believed that he could withstand the shockwaves from the clash of spiritual force between Lu Yin and Night King Zhenwu as the fourth on the top 100 rankings. However, he had overestimated himself. Reaching the level of Lu Yin and Night King Zhenwu was completely different from those on the top 100 rankings. As the top of the top 100 rankings, Xia Tian had challenged all of the 10 arbiters, but she had been defeated. Avery was still far from Xia Tian's level. When the spiritual force shockwaves hit him, all he could do was fall to the ground. Fortunately, with his strength he would not be turned into an idiot. All of the elites who had participated in the banquet dodged, as those who were not at the level of the 10 arbiters could not withstand the shockwaves from the clash. Perhaps only Xia Tian could barely withstand it, and Qing Longlong was certain that even Tai Yuanjun, who was ranked second on the top 100 rankings, would not be able to withstand the shockwaves. Only Starsabil remained standing where she was. She was able to divine the incoming attacks, and she was certain that she would not be affected. Her gaze remained fixed on Night King Zhenwu. Today might be the day that you achieve glory. Zhou Day Night lay on the ground, muttering to herself. She could not understand why Night King Zhenwu had done such a thing. He had clearly promised her that he would release the Day King bloodline. Lu Yin's gaze was unprecedentedly cold as he stared at Night King Zhenwu. You deserve to die. Night King Zhenwu was cold and arrogant as the black color of his poisoned right hand gradually faded away. How dare the lowly Day King bloodline dream of gaining freedom? I can agree to it, but I can also refuse it. Lu Yin, I can tell you that I originally wanted to return freedom to the Day King bloodline, but it was all because of you that you ascended to the top of the Night Vigil Pavilion. You actually dared to ascend to the top of the Night Vigil Pavilion. You're courting death. He pointed at Zhou Day Night. The Day King bloodline will never be able to rise again because of you. I will bury tens of thousands of the Day King bloodline. From now on, there will be no more Day King bloodline in the Day Night clan. Zhou Day Night's body trembled and she looked up in despair. I comprehended Night's End, Daybreak. I can help you do anything you want. I've already surpassed Zhanlong Day Night, and no one in the entire Day Night clan has a higher innate gift than me. Night King Zhenwu lowered his head and beamed at her. Yes, no one has a higher innate gift than you. Unfortunately, it's precisely because your innate gift is too high that you must die. The Day King bloodline actually had the chance to comprehend Night's End, Daybreak, so they must all die. They all died because of you. Remember, it's all because of you. Zhou Day Night's pupils dilated as she endured an unimaginable blow. You were the one who forced me to surpass everyone else. Night King Zhenwu's lips curled up as he looked at Lu Yin. Look, women are just that stupid. I can play with them however I want. It's not just her. Do you hear that song? That's the Fireplume tribe, a stupid tribe. They even have a stupid princess who would rather blind herself than save me? Ah. Lu Yin's eyes widened and his 9-lined battle force soared into the sky as he sent a palm strike towards Night King Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu's battle force also soared into the sky as he tapped out with a finger. Night King finger. There was a thump as their bodies collided, and an extremely terrifying spiritual force swept out in all directions. Black and white intertwined. This time it was different from when they had fought in the Innerverse. Back then, the celestial phenomenon had been suppressed, and no one had been able to use an attack with a power level of over 200,000. Now, Night King Zhenwu's unimaginable spiritual force had wantonly bombarded Lu Yin, and the Night King finger's power level had doubled. Lu Yin's spiritual force could only barely withstand it, and he was like a small boat in a storm. Fortunately, his physical body's toughness surpassed Night King Zhenwu's. Night King Zhenwu had used his spiritual force to force Lu Yin back, but Lu Yin had also used his overlaying stacks to force Night King Zhenwu back. The two retreated a few steps at the same time, but they didn't waste any words as they charged towards each other again. Night King Zhenwu's 9-lined battle force shone even more resplendently as he activated his Night King's body. Lu Yin, do you really think that the Innerverse is facing my full strength? Today I'll show you that even the 10 arbiters have differences in strength. Lu Yin clenched his fists and his pupils transformed into runes as he stared at Night King Zhenwu. He saw Night King Zhenwu's finger descend and it was still the Night King finger. This was the attack that Night King Zhenwu was most proficient in. Lu Yin opened his palm and 2 suns converged before he pushed them out. The 2 blazing suns were pierced through by the Night King finger, and they cracked open before exploding. The second sun crashed into Night King Zhenwu, but black and white intertwined to form a visible barrier in front of Night King Zhenwu's body. This barrier was completely formed from his spiritual force, and it blocked the second sun. Then an arrow formed in his hand and shot towards Lu Yin. Night King Zhenwu had not only comprehended many of the Day-Night clan's battle techniques, but he had also received the 6th mainland's arrow progenitor's inheritance from the Daoist sect's ruins. Back then, Lu Yin had been defeated before he could even roll his die because of the arrow progenitor's heart arrow secret technique. It was impossible to guard against and anything could be transformed into an arrow. The arrow progenitor's battle technique was a progenitor's inheritance that surpassed the Day-Night clan's battle techniques. Night King Zhenwu had never used it before, not even during his battle with Bukong. Lu Yin hurriedly used the U-secret art to divert the arrow, but the arrow progenitor's battle technique was not that easy to divert. Even with the U-secret art he could only divert a small portion of it. The arrow still struck Lu Yin, and a trail of blood spilled out from his waist onto the ground. Lu Yin did not heal his injuries, nor did he choose to attack Night King Zhenwu. Instead he grabbed the flesh at his waist and tore it apart, causing intense pain to spread throughout his body. However, this pain was nothing compared to the heart arrow secret technique. The heart arrow secret technique was impossible to defend against, and all Lu Yin could see was the number of rune lines. Any flesh that was struck by Night King Zhenwu's battle technique would be torn apart. During the battle in the Innerverse, Lu Yin had been careless and had been defeated by the heart arrow secret technique. The number of rune lines contained within the heart arrow secret technique was too small, and it was very difficult to detect. This time, Lu Yin had specifically targeted Night King Zhenwu's attack. The power of the arrow just now had not caused much damage to his waist, but it had brought about the heart arrow secret technique that he feared the most. If he had not dug out that piece of flesh in time, the heart arrow secret technique would have appeared in his heart again, and the result would have been exactly the same as what had happened in the Innerverse. This was Night King Zhenwu's strength. In the Innerverse and Outerverse, countless people had seen the battle between Lu Yin and Night King Zhenwu. No one had expected that a battle would break out during the Eternal Night Banquet, and they had not been able to react in time. When they saw Lu Yin harm himself they were even more puzzled. In the Eternal Night Academy, the crowd scattered and stayed as far away as possible. Ling Kai cursed under his breath as he knew that something would happen today. He watched as Lu Yin dug out a piece of his own flesh and he was stunned. Has Lu Yin gone mad? Night King Zhenwu sneered. Do you think that you can defend against the heart arrow secret technique just like that? How much flesh do you have left to dig out? He then raised his hand, causing an arrow to take shape and shoot out. Lu Yin wanted to take out some special medicine to heal himself, but he discovered that he could not open his cosmic ring, as his Night King planet had been isolated. As the arrow shot out he gathered 2 suns in his right palm and pushed them out. The arrow collided with the sun's and star energy exploded. Star energy with a power level of more than 250,000 swept through the entire drill ground. The feathers on the back of the arrow suddenly unfurled, and it pierced through the two suns before continuing towards Lu Yin. Lu Yin had not expected that the two suns would not be able to defend against this arrow. However, the obstruction of the two suns had bought him enough time to activate the secret art. He waved his hand and the arrow brushed past his shoulder, narrowly missing him. Even so, Lu Yin stared at his shoulder to make sure that there were no weak rune lines entering his body. Only then did he relax. In the distance, Wen Qian'er and the rest were shocked. Where had Night King Zhenwu gotten such a terrifying archery technique from? Everyone had seen Lu Yin's battle with Lan Si, and they were well aware of the power of Lu Yin's two sons. Even so, they had not been able to block the arrow, which meant that this archery technique could not possibly be a battle technique from the Day-Night clan. No one knew where Night King Zhenwu's archery technique had come from. There was no need for Night King Zhenwu to explain, and he fired 3 consecutive arrows. Lu Yin had used the Ian Evolution True Scripture to weaken his rune lines, and his force field battle force as well as his Fateson, but he still could not completely defend against these 3 arrows. The 3 arrows did not cause much damage to Lu Yin, but they were accompanied by the secret technique Heart Arrow, which caused the flesh on Lu Yin's shoulders, thighs and abdomen to be gouged out. His entire body was drenched in blood, and the onlookers felt their scalps go numb. Night King Zhenwu was completely suppressing Lu Yin. Lu Yin could only passively defend. During the battle in the Innerverse, Night King Zhenwu had not revealed the progenitor of Arrow's archery technique, and he had only used Heart Arrow. Lu Yin had not known that the progenitor of Arrow's archery technique was so terrifying that it even surpassed Lan Si's emptiness palm. None of Lu Yin's techniques could block it and he could only face it head-on. But even then, how long could he last? Night King Zhenwu arrogantly replied, "I've already said that I'll show you the difference between us." An arrow then appeared in his hand. This arrow was different from the previous ones as each of the previous arrows had a single feather, but this one had 2. "You've worked hard in the day-night flow zone. Now die." Night King Zhenwu then fired an arrow. A twin-feathered arrow doubled the power of the arrow, and it also carried the secret technique Heart Arrow. No one in the same generation as Night King Zhenwu could withstand it. Night King Zhenwu wanted to use this battle to firmly establish his position as the head of the 10 arbiters. He had the Day-Night clan's inheritance, the progenitor of Arrow's inheritance, secret techniques and status. He had everything. Even Lu Yin, who had defeated Lan Si, would be easily killed. Next he would obtain the Night's End, Daybreak, and the 3rd Night King might appear. With the Starsabil sect's assistance, Night King Zhenwu was the destined one. Night King Zhenwu was the most likely person to step into the progenitor realm, and he was the hope of the 5th mainland. He wanted to present all of this to the entire universe as this was the Night King Zhenwu that he wanted. Chapter 1071. The double-feathered arrow pierced through the void, carrying with it Night King Zhenwu's indomitable aura. This arrow represented his glory. Lu Yin suddenly looked up and gathered star energy in his right hand. As a cruiser who had gone through 7 cycles, the amount of star energy he possessed was close to that of an enlighter with a power level of 300,000. His remaining star energy instantly transformed into a sun, and a scorching ray of sunlight shot out from the heavens and towards the double-feathered arrow. At the same time, Lu Yin used the true scripture of Ian evolution to reduce the rune lines of the double-feathered arrow to its limit as it fiercely collided with the arrow. There was a loud boom as the ground trembled, the drill ground cracked and the void collapsed. Even Night King Planet trembled, which alarmed the Night King bloodline's older generation powerhouses. Night King Zhenwu had not expected Lu Yin to possess such terrifying star energy. No one had expected Lu Yin's star energy to rival an enlighter with a power level of 300,000. This was Lu Yin's most powerful attack after transforming into a sun. Combined with the true scripture of Ian evolution's rune lines, Lu Yin was able to barely resist the double-feathered arrow. Lu Yin's figure flashed and he slapped a palm towards Night King Zhenwu from a distance. 9-lined battle force 100 stacks, 600-fold space render palm. Night King Zhenwu had not expected Lu Yin to be able to counterattack. From what he knew, Lu Yin would definitely be heavily injured by the double-feathered arrow, and the heart arrow secret technique would be enough to take his life. This was a progenitor-inherited battle technique that even the Day-Night clan's strongest battle technique could not compare to. It was the trump card that Night King Zhenwu had used to deal with the freakish geniuses of the Neoverse, and it far surpassed the battle techniques of Lan Si and the others. Night King Zhenwu spat out a mouthful of blood, and his 9-lined battle force distorted. There was a loud boom, but the double-feathered arrow still pierced through the sun and shot into the distance. The sun exploded where it had been, and the attack was equivalent to an attack from a powerhouse with a power level of 300,000. The Evernight drill ground split apart as star energy swept out in all directions. The first Night King's statue slowly collapsed. Several figures came from afar. How dare you? They were the older generation of the Night King bloodline, and they hurriedly supported the first Night King statue. Lu Yin immediately charged towards Night King Zhenwu and tapped out with his dream finger, causing the void to freeze. Before coming here, Lu Yin had already simulated his battle with Night King Zhenwu. As long as he could defend against the heart arrow secret technique, then he could rely on his innate gift of the die to obtain victory. Just like his battle with Lan Si, his innate gift of the die was too powerful. Even if Night King Zhenwu had an innate gift of the die, it would still be useless. As long as Lu Yin hid in his 4-point space, not only would he be able to recover his star energy, but he would also be able to increase his power level. This was a cheat-level innate gift, and Lu Yin was confident that he could defeat Night King Zhenwu. Although Night King Zhenwu's archery technique was extremely powerful, it could not overshadow the miraculous innate gift of the die. His defense was not as terrifying as Lan Si's. What Lu Yin needed to do now was to trade injury for injury and injure Night King Zhenwu as much as possible. Of course, shaking the die depended on luck, and this was the only exception. Even if there was an exception, Lu Yin still had a backup plan. Otherwise, he would not have rashly come to Night King Planet. Whether it was himself, Zhou Day-Night, or even those from the White King bloodline, Lu Yin was confident that he could take them all away. Suddenly, Night King Zhenwu raised his head and grinned. His teeth were stained with bright red blood, and he looked abnormally terrifying. Time's up. Lu Yin pointed at Night King Zhenwu, but his expression suddenly changed as a black gas appeared from his abdomen and gradually spread throughout his body. His vision gradually blurred as he felt a wave of weakness wash over him. Night King Zhenwu sneered and kicked out, sending Lu Yin flying. Lu Yin struggled to control his body, and his legs left 2 long trails on the ground. It took him great effort to stabilize himself and not fall over. He spat out a mouthful of black blood and his body went numb. "7th bro, you've been poisoned," the monkey shouted in panic. Lu Yin also knew that he had been poisoned, but when had it happened? What kind of poison could be so powerful? How could it have escaped his detection without him even seeing the rune lines? This black color was exactly the same as the poison that Night King Zhenwu had wrongly accused Zhou Day-Night of poisoning him. Night King Zhenwu hadn't been poisoned, but Lu Yin had? After the intense battle, the eternal night drill grounds had already been torn apart. As the dust settled, everyone saw Night King Zhenwu standing tall in the sky. Below him, Lu Yin was barely able to keep himself from falling to the ground. His limbs were stiff and his vision was blurry. His brain was spinning and his entire body was trembling uncontrollably. Countless people in the Innerverse and Outerverse were watching. Night King Zhenwu looked down at Lu Yin from above. "I've already said that there are differences between the 10 arbiters. You were too arrogant to challenge me and even meddle in my Day-Night clan's internal affairs. Lu Yin, you deserve more than death. You are a traitor of the 5th mainland." Lu Yin opened his mouth, but he couldn't say a single word. His entire body was numb. "7th bro, how are you doing, 7th bro?" the monkey shouted. Lu Yin's entire body was drenched in blood, and he looked extremely miserable. However, he was still holding on and not collapsing. Beads of sweat dripped down his body and he didn't even dare to raise his head. In everyone's eyes, this was a sign of submission. He had lost to Night King Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu was proud as he had been waiting for this day for a long time. Now he rejoiced that this person had defeated Lan Si and given him a chance to surpass the 10 arbiters. Not too far away, Zhou Day-Night despaired. She hadn't known that the wine she had given Lu Yin was poisoned. She really hadn't known. Around them, those who had participated in the banquet were all shocked. Some were excited, some cheered, and some mocked Lu Yin for overestimating himself and trying to challenge Night King Zhenwu. Starsabil stared at Night King Zhenwu as his moment of glory had arrived. At this moment, Night King Zhenwu was at his peak. He had easily defeated Lu Yin and displayed an unimaginably terrifying strength. Everyone had acknowledged Lu Yin's strength after his battle with Lan Si, but he had been like a child in front of Night King Zhenwu. This was the difference between the 10 arbiters and themselves. No one had expected Night King Zhenwu to be so terrifying. Many people thought about the recent rumors of the leader of the 10 arbiters. Did Night King Zhenwu really have the strength to become the leader of the 10 arbiters? Starsabil had been supporting him all this time, so had the Starsabil sect seen something? Countless people in the Innerverse, 8 Great Flow Zones, the Hall of Honor and the Outerverse were all watching Night King Zhenwu. Lu Yin's victory over Lan Si had been as glorious as Night King Zhenwu was. Night King Zhenwu landed in front of Zhou Xian and slowly said, "Woman, you're really stupid. Your stupidity has harmed the entire Day King bloodline. Do you know why this banquet is being held? Because of you, this banquet will go down in history. On this day, a woman named Zhou Xian from the Day King bloodline will assassinate Night King Zhenwu, causing the entire Day King bloodline to be buried." Zhou Xian's face was deathly pale. Night King Zhenwu's gaze was calm as he continued, "You must be very curious. Where are your parents?" Zhou Xian suddenly looked up and stared at Night King Zhenwu. Blood flowed from her lips and she bit her tongue. Where are my parents?" Night King Zhenwu's lips curled up. "They're dead." Zhou Xian's pupils shrank and her mind went blank. Not just them but also the tens of thousands of people from the Day King bloodline. Oh right, there's also that Lu Yin. Actually, he might not have lost to me, but it's a pity that you gave him a cup of poisoned wine, which caused him to die here. Parents, relatives and lovers will all leave you on this day. How interesting, huh? Night King Zhenwu laughed. Although his voice was loud, it was controlled so that no one else could hear him. Only Night King Zhenwu, Zhou Xian and Lu Yin could hear him. Lu Yin raised his head with difficulty and stared at Night King Zhenwu's back. This person was recklessly toying with Zhou Xian. Just as he had said, he would force Zhou Xian into a desperate situation. And this was the perfect opportunity to steal Night's End, Daybreak. Why did he have to do that? Night's End, Daybreak was on the same level as the Night King Heaven-splitting technique, but it was not as good as the Arrow Progenitor's battle technique. Everything that Night King Zhenwu had done was for the sake of stealing Night's End, and only by forcing Zhou Xian into a desperate situation would he be able to do so. Night King Zhenwu's personality was one of the darkest in the universe. Everything that happened today is because of your stupidity. Your stupidity has harmed you and the entire Day King bloodline. Night King Zhenwu shouted. Zhou Xian's body trembled and her eyes went slack. 2 streams of blood flowed down from the corners of her eyes, and her entire being crumbled. Her originally black and white hair had turned completely white without any luster. She had completely collapsed and even the Firewing tribe's singing could not save her. Night King Zhenwu was excited. This was the moment. That's right, this was the moment. He had done so much to lure Lu Yin over, not just to kill him but also for Zhou Xian. He had done everything he could to force Zhou Xian into a desperate situation, all for the sake of this moment. No one understood the importance of Night's End, Daybreak better than him. However, it was still not enough. She was just a little bit away. As he thought about it, he waved his hand and caused the ground to split open. 2 dried-up corpses appeared in front of Zhou Xian, their faces still recognizable. Who are they? Do you know them? They were your parents and they died because of you. Night King Zhenwu then turned around and ordered, "Bury the White King's bloodline." The people in the distance had no idea what was going on. At the same time, Lu Yin was finally able to move. His die appeared and with a tap of his finger it spun and stopped. Zhou Xian's eyes were slack as she stared blankly at the ground. In the distance she could hear the despairing cries of tens of thousands of people from the White King bloodline. Suddenly, everything disappeared from her ears. All she could hear was the thumping of her heart. Because of her, her parents had died and they had died in such a miserable manner. Her clansmen, her family and everything she had ever possessed had been reduced to nothing. In her extreme grief and despair, Shude Night knelt on the ground, her hair turning completely white. Night King Zhenwu was excited, and at this moment he raised his hand and slapped Shude Night's forehead. At that moment Lu Yin's die stopped spinning. 4 pips. Time stopped space. The scene in front of him changed and Lu Yin appeared in a grayish-white space. His entire body went limp as the poison spread throughout his body, causing his consciousness to become increasingly hazy. "Seventh bro, where are we?" the monkey asked. This time he had not been blocked and he had directly appeared in a grayish-white space. This was the second time. Lu Yin did not have the time to care about the monkey. In this space he could use his cosmic ring. Night King Planet had been sealed off, and using his cosmic ring was one of Night King Zhenwu's methods to deal with Lu Yin. Since Lu Yin had been able to fight against an envoy-level powerhouse outside of the Outerverse, Night King Zhenwu must have been prepared. Fortunately, Lu Yin had the innate gift of the die. Chapter 1072. Monkey, what kind of poison did I get? Lu Yin asked as he rummaged through the pills in his cosmic ring. The monkey solemnly replied, I don't know, but if even 7th bro couldn't detect it, then it's not a simple poison. Detoxifying it will be too difficult. Lu Yin searched through all the pills in his cosmic ring, but he was certain that none of them could detoxify the poison. Night King Zhenwu was too cautious. Even if Night King Zhenwu was confident in defeating Lu Yin, he had still used poison. Night King Zhenwu didn't want to defeat Lu Yin, but rather to completely crush Lu Yin and establish his prestige as the leader of the 10 arbiters. What a pity. If the wisdom root hadn't withered, it would definitely have been able to detoxify the poison. The monkey sighed. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately blocked the monkey off before rolling his die. In this space he could definitely roll 3 pips. The first pip was ineffective and he had to rest for 10 days. The second pip was also ineffective and he had to rest for 10 days. The third pip was also ineffective and he had to rest for 10 days. He repeated this process over and over again, but it seemed like luck hadn't arrived. Fortunately, although the poison hadn't been detoxified, Lu Yin hadn't been poisoned to death due to his physical strength. It was also possible that Night King Zhenwu hadn't planned on killing him with poison and had instead wanted to kill him with his own hands. Over the past few weeks, Lu Yin's external injuries had healed considerably, and he had also continued to absorb star energy. He had completely recovered and all he had to do was wait for the detoxification. As the die's rotation slowly stopped, it hit 3 pips and 2 screens appeared. Lu Yin's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly tossed in the wisdom root before throwing in some star essence. He was shocked to find that after throwing in 100,000 star essence, his wisdom root had only decreased by a sliver. This was ridiculous. Up until now, the most expensive item that Lu Yin had upgraded was the Heaven Firestone. The first upgrade cost 1.3 million star essence and he had only upgraded it once. As for the wisdom root, based on the current situation, it would probably cost at least a few million star essence to upgrade it once. It was rumored that the wisdom root had been personally planted by Ancestor Hui. Not only could it detoxify poison, but eating it could also temporarily enlighten a person's mind and allow them to comprehend many things. Lu Yin didn't know if this was true or not, but he just hoped that it could detoxify the poison. Lu Yin swallowed his saliva and threw in more star essence. Soon he used up 1 million star essence, but his wisdom root only decreased by 1/10. Lu Yin pursed his lips as this was too much of an exaggeration. This was just a withered wisdom root, but a single upgrade would require tens of millions of star essence. Fortunately, he had more than 17 million star essence, or else he might not have been able to upgrade it. As the root of wisdom descended, its surface gradually regained its luster and specks of light appeared. When the root of wisdom completely fell into the lower layer of the screen, a small cluster of roots that resembled a horned dragon appeared in front of Lu Yin's eyes. It looked ordinary and it only had a bit of luster to it. However, this small cluster of roots had cost him 10 million star essence. Lu Yin used his star energy to create water and soaked the wisdom root in it, boiling it as if he was drinking tea. Gradually, a fragrant aroma filled his nose and cleared his mind. Everything became clear to the naked eye, and he felt as if he had returned to his peak condition. It was useful. He impatiently drank a mouthful of the liquid, and the refreshing sensation washed down his stomach. The black poison that had been coiling around his body was disintegrated at a visible rate and gradually dissipated. He raised his hand and activated his overlaying stacks. He immediately used 30 stacks, which was the limit of his deductions. Now that he could continue, he could clearly feel that he could easily deduce the next step. It was very easy. Why hadn't he thought of this before? 40 stacks was very simple. 50 stacks was also very simple. He had clearly felt that these deductions would be very difficult and impossible in the past, but now he could do them as easily as breathing. His mind was clear and he felt more relaxed than he had ever felt before. He waved his hand and activated 60 stacks, 70 stacks, and all the way up to 100 stacks. The peak that he had grasped was 100 stacks. He closed his eyes and recalled his battle with Lan Si, and the scenes replayed before his eyes. On Ping King Planet, Lan Si had used 100 stacks. Lu Yin raised his hand and Lan Si's palm strike seemed to appear in front of him. Ripples spread out and 100 stacks transformed into a berserk force that surged towards him. Lu Yin retreated a few steps and his right palm trembled. It was not enough to withstand the force and his body continued to retreat. Every time he took a step back, his understanding of the overlaying stacks deepened by one layer. He took 10 steps back, which was 110 stacks. 20 steps back was 120 stacks. And this was not the limit of his body's endurance. When he took 50 steps back, Lu Yin raised his hand and struck out with his palm. 150 stacks was not enough. It was still not enough. Lu Yin closed his eyes and pressed his left hand against his right arm. There was a soft sound and his right palm struck out with a bang. The void distorted as he used 170 stacks and his right arm felt powerless. Lu Yin suddenly opened his eyes and looked at his right arm in ecstasy. He had actually deduced 170 stacks. How had he done it? Had he done it on his own? Deductions on his own were different from other people's teachings. If he had competed against Lan Si in the overlaying stacks Dao, then Lu Yin would have been able to suppress him with the same 150 stacks. This was the power of his own deductions, and his understanding of the overlaying stacks Dao was incomparably deep. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat as he looked at the air. He closed his eyes and continued to recall his battle with Lan Si, but he couldn't remember anything. "No, I have to continue." He thought about it for a while and drank another mouthful of wisdom root tea. His mind cleared up once more, and he recalled every movement that Lan Si had made when he had used the emptiness palm. Even the pauses caused by inertia were magnified infinitely in his mind. Gradually he raised his hand and struck out with an invisible palm. This was the emptiness palm. The emptiness palm was the manifestation of Lan Si's complete understanding of the overlaying stacks Dao. Even Lan Si himself had only been able to cultivate it after grasping 150 stacks. Lu Yin had used the wisdom root to deduce 170 stacks, and with his deep understanding of the overlaying stacks Dao and the wisdom root tea, he was able to easily comprehend the emptiness palm. This emptiness palm was like a reappearance of Lan Si. No, it had surpassed Lan Si. Lu Yin's overlaying stacks Dao had been deduced by himself, and he had deduced 170 stacks. With his physical strength, the emptiness palm didn't cause any pauses due to inertia, which made him much stronger than Lan Si. Lu Yin himself didn't understand why his physical strength was so strong. It was constantly increasing. There wasn't much wisdom root tea left, and it had nothing to do with the added water. This small pinch of wisdom root could only make a small amount of tea, and it was enough for 3 sips at most. In other words, this small pinch of wisdom root could make 5 sips of tea. He couldn't waste it. Now that he had comprehended the emptiness palm, what was next? Lu Yin fell into deep thought. Lock breaking? The true scripture of Yin evolution? Serious art? Or the dream finger? There were too many things that he needed to comprehend. Suddenly, Lu Yin remembered that the most important thing to comprehend was a secret technique. It wasn't the Yu secret art, but rather the chessboard that Mr. Mu had brought him to watch with the help of the Zhou family's bloodline. It was the Su secret art. The Su secret art scattered stars chess. It was a secret technique of the 7 courts Su family that had been created by someone called Su Wangtian. Lu Yin picked up the wisdom root tea and took a sip, doing his best to recall the chessboard that he had seen before. Gradually he seemed to see that ancient chessboard again, and he heard people playing, people retracting, people laughing, and people sighing. His consciousness seemed to have merged with the chess pieces, but it also seemed to have merged with the chess players. Under the moonlight, every chess piece on the ancient chessboard was like a star that was densely packed together. He didn't know if he was in space or on the chessboard. Was he a chess piece? Or a chess player? He couldn't understand this game, and he still couldn't. Even with the wisdom root, he still couldn't understand it. I, Su Wangtian, observed chess, played chess, retracted my moves, and comprehended chess for hundreds of thousands of years. Finally, I created the secret technique scattered stars chess. Throughout the universe, only I, Su Wangtian, can retract my moves. A person's life experience cannot be regretted, but I, Su Wangtian, will regret. Only I, Su Wangtian, can retract my moves. The words woke Lu Yin up, and he was sweating profusely. He still couldn't understand the game. Even with the help of the wisdom root T, he still couldn't understand it. He tried to recall the chessboard, but he shook his head vigorously. No, he couldn't force himself to understand the game if he couldn't understand it. What could he do? What could he do? As he thought about it, he couldn't help but look at the wisdom root T and take a sip. His mind cleared up, and an idea flashed through his mind. He raised his hand, and his die appeared. There was an innate gift on possession. It was the innate gift that he had borrowed from Xianxia when he had rolled possession at the border of the endless weave. Xianxia's innate gift was deduction. Lu Yin knew that he didn't have the ability to comprehend scattered stars chess on his own, and even with the help of the wisdom root T, he still wouldn't be able to comprehend it. However, the Seven Courts Su family definitely had a descendant who could comprehend this a secret. Since others could comprehend it, it meant that they could also comprehend it. If he couldn't comprehend it on his own, then he could only rely on others. Xianxia was very smart, and since she was valued by Wang Wen and was on the same level as Wei Rong, her innate gift was deduction. Lu Yin believed that she could help him. Lu Yin borrowed Xianxia's innate gift and took another sip of the wisdom root tea. Whether or not he could succeed would depend on this. The ancient chessboard appeared once more, and Lu Yin borrowed Xianxia's innate gift. When he looked at the chessboard again, he saw a different scene. What is this? Not long after, Lu Yin opened his eyes and stood up. He had finished drinking the wisdom root tea, and the wisdom root was gone. This was the most expensive tea that Lu Yin had ever drunk, but it was also the most useful. He looked at the time and saw that he would be able to leave very soon. Lu Yin took a deep breath. Knight King Zhenwu, the second match had begun. In the Eternal Night Arena, Knight King Zhenwu's palm followed Zhuode Knight's despairing cry. Just as his palm was about to strike Zhuode Knight's forehead, a hand suddenly appeared and grabbed Knight King Zhenwu's wrist. Knight King Zhenwu's face changed, and he slowly turned around. He saw Lu Yin and his bone-chilling gaze. "You can still move?" Knight King Zhenwu was in disbelief. Countless people in the Innerverse and Outerverse saw this scene, and they rubbed their eyes in disbelief. No one had expected Lu Yin to still be able to move. How had he crossed over? He had been too fast. Zhuode Knight's pupils dilated, and her entire body swayed. She looked as if she could collapse at any moment. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly exerted more force. There was a cracking sound as Knight King Zhenwu's 9-line battle force tried to resist, but as Lu Yin exerted more force, Knight King Zhenwu's 9-line battle force became somewhat unstable. Both of their 9-lined battle forces soared into the sky at the same time, and the ground cracked open. The three of them gradually sank as pebbles flew into the air and disappeared in midair. Knight King Zhenwu was aghast, and he stared at Lu Yin. "Impossible. How did you recover? You were beaten half to death by me just now. You should have collapsed and been trampled under my feet. You should have died." Lu Yin's gaze turned vicious as the two 9-line battle forces collided. Soon after, a berserk spiritual force appeared once more, colliding like a storm. It formed a visible airflow that split the sky above Night King Planet apart. "You deserve to die," Lu Yin growled through gritted teeth. Chapter 1073. Night King Zhenwu bellowed, "Let me go. I only wanted to force her to her death. You're all ants and I'm the chosen one. I'm about to obtain Nightfall, Daybreak, the Arrow Progenitor's inheritance and the Star Tower's inheritance. I'll become a progenitor and lead the fifth mainland to counterattack the sixth mainland. I'll establish an unparalleled empire, and anyone who resists me is betraying the fifth mainland. Get your claws off me. Lu Yin kicked out at Night King Zhenwu's stomach. Night King Zhenwu's spiritual force formed a barrier in front of him, but it was shattered by Lu Yin's kick. This was an explosion of 150 stacks, and it was not something that could be blocked by spiritual force alone. Night King Zhenwu was sent flying by this kick, and it was even more vicious than the kick that had sent Lu Yin flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood in midair and he could not even stabilize himself. He crashed into the ground and crashed into Night King Planet's core. Countless people were speechless as they stared blankly at Lu Yin. What had just happened? It was as if he had become a completely different person. No one could understand the mysteries of the Dai, and thus, no one could understand Lu Yin's mysteries. At this moment Lu Yin did not think too much. He only wanted to kill Night King Zhenwu. Beside the first Night King's statue, several experts from the Night King bloodline looked at each other. Should we attack? Let's wait a little longer. There's no rush. Zhenwu won't lose, someone said. At the same time the day-night flow zone sent out an alarm. Countless pirate ships were under attack, and the day-night clan's army was out in full force. Leon's armada had officially declared war on the day-night clan, and thousands of pirate groups from the Innerverse had surrounded the day-night clan. The day-night clan was in chaos. Outside of Night King Planet, Heizage Leon appeared and glanced at the planet. He had almost been unable to hold himself back from attacking, but fortunately, the little brat had arrived in time and saved him from interfering with the younger generation's battle. As he looked at Night King Planet, Heizage Leon took a deep breath and roared, "Dijiang, get the hell out here." Night King Planet trembled and everyone looked up at the sky. Lu Yin looked up, Heizage Leon had arrived. Suddenly an arrow shot out from underground. Lu Yin raised his hand, and the arrow exploded in the void, shattered by an invisible palm. Night King Zhenwu rushed out from underground and looked on in disbelief. How is this possible? What did you do? There was a planet not far from Night King Planet and Lance was there. The 10 arbiters would never ascend to Night King Planet, as Night King Zhenwu would ascend to the Night Watcher Pavilion and look down on them. They would not interfere in the battle between Lu Yin and Night King Zhenwu. Even if Lan Si supported Lu Yin unconditionally, it was impossible for him to help Lu Yin deal with Night King Zhenwu. These were the rules, and the battles between the 10 arbiters had to be fair. When Lu Yin shattered the arrow, Lan Si's expression changed, and his mouth fell open in disbelief. Was that an empty palm? He wasn't the only one who had seen it. Many others had seen it as well. It hadn't been long since Lan Si and Lu Yin's battle, but the Empyrean Palm's fame had already spread throughout the universe, and it had left Lu Yin in such a miserable state. Countless people were looking for this battle technique, and the shock that the Empyrean Palm had caused when it had first appeared was now several times greater than when Lu Yin had used it before. No one had expected Lu Yin to use the Emptiness Palm. In the outer verse, Lan Baobao, Elder Iron, and the others' eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Wasn't that just an empty palm? Night King Zhenwu's face sank. Impossible. How could it be an empty palm strike? Did Lan Si teach him that? Even if Lan Si had taught him, there was no way he could have learned it so quickly. Back then, Lu Yin had used all of Bai Xing's knowledge to deal with Lan Si's Empyrean Palm. Now he was going to give Night King Zhenwu a taste of his own medicine. The 10 arbiters were indeed divided into the strongest and the weakest, but the difference was not that great. Lan Si's Empyrean Palm was about to be shown to Night King Zhenwu. With a bang, Night King Zhenwu, who had been completely unprepared, was sent flying back 1,000 meters by the Empyrean Palm. His 9-lined battle force almost cracked and he coughed up blood as he stared at Lu Yin in shock. His face turned sinister as he gritted his teeth and roared, "You're courting death." He then raised his hand and his spiritual force condensed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Night King split the heavens technique. Lu Yin raised his head and silently recited the Stonewall scriptures. The Night King's split the heavens technique was too powerful, and if he didn't recite the Stonewall scriptures he wouldn't be able to withstand it. The outside world was in an uproar because of the Night King's split the heavens technique. In the Wen family, the old man who was sweeping the floor changed as he looked at the screen. This battle technique had actually reappeared, and it had caused an entire era to fall silent. In the Beast Tamer's flow zone's divine grade hull, a million mountains trembled. The Night King split the heavens technique. It's actually the Night King split the heavens technique. In the Sword Sect, Lu Qindra's gaze turned cold, as he had never expected this kid to have comprehended the Night King split the heavens technique. Fortunately, the other unparalleled battle technique, Night's End Daybreak, had not appeared yet. Otherwise, the Day-Night clan would have been unstoppable. In the Divine Venomous Dynasty, young King Qing was shocked. Since the Night King split the heavens technique has appeared, when will Night's End Daybreak appear? Lingling Qiu snorted. Since the Night King split the heavens technique had appeared, that Lu Yin definitely wasn't Night King Zhenwu's opponent. What a pity. He was a good seedling who was qualified to become Ling Gong's husband. In the Chaos Flow Zone, Song Zhou clenched his fists. The Day-Night clan could be considered his Chaos God Mountain's nemesis, and now that the Night King split the heavens technique had appeared, he knew that he was in trouble. In the future he would either have to kill Night King Zhenwu or be defeated by the Day-Night clan. Logically speaking, the Arrow Progenitor's battle technique definitely surpassed the Day-Night clan's unparalleled battle technique. Unfortunately, the Arrow Progenitor was a progenitor from the Sixth Mainland, and no one in the Innerverse recognized him. Otherwise, they would have been shocked by the Arrow Progenitor. Only by personally facing the Arrow Progenitor's battle technique could one truly understand how terrifying it was. Lu Yin could use various methods to deal with the Emptiness Palm, but it would be difficult for him to deal with the Arrow Progenitor's battle technique. He could only use his full strength, but he only had one chance. No one believed that Lu Yin could remain unscathed under the Night King split the heavens technique, but Lu Yin was still able to withstand it. It seems like you haven't learned your lesson, Lu Yin barked as he struck out with his Emptiness Palm again, sending Night King Zhenwu flying. Night King Zhenwu's hair was disheveled and he cut a sorry figure. He glared fiercely at Lu Yin as he raised his hand and continuously used the Night King clan's battle techniques. However, his battle techniques were practically useless against Lu Yin, and a single Emptiness Palm was able to negate all of his attacks. Lu Yin had basically fused with Lan Si, and with his physical strength that was practically immune to Night King Zhenwu's spiritual force, he was able to unleash an extremely powerful Emptiness Palm. Night King Zhenwu was basically fighting 1 against 2 and he was beaten into a sorry state. Everyone was stunned. The great Night King Zhenwu was actually being beaten up? The Day-Night clan members could not believe this, and they all thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them. The one being beaten up should have been Lu Yin. The experts who had been guarding the first Night King's statue could no longer sit still, and they all wanted to attack Lu Yin. The heavens exploded and a beautiful woman walked out. Night King clan, your opponent is here. One powerhouse after another appeared on Night King planet. Countless people knew that the Day-Night clan was about to undergo a huge change, and at the very least it would not be peaceful. Outside Night King planet, Haizij Lian gripped his tyrant blade and looked at the black-robed middle-aged man who had walked out of the void. Night King Dijiang, you're finally willing to come out? The black-robed man's tone was calm as he looked at Haizij Lian. You're here to escort that brat on Night King planet, right? Take him away, I won't touch him. Haizij Lian laughed. What a joke. Your Day-Night clan's so-called destiny of heaven is about to come to an end. You're dreaming if you think it'll end so easily. Night King Dijiang frowned. Haizij Lian, my Day-Night clan isn't as simple as you think it is. Take your people and leave and I can treat today's matter as if it never happened. We can even write off our past grudges. You're still dreaming. Let me chop you awake. Haizij Lian then slashed down with his blade. Night King Dijiang sighed helplessly. At the same time, a dispute broke out between the Hall of Honor and the Interstellar Arbitration Office. One of the presiding judges, Mu Tianluan of Despair, strongly requested to assist the Day-Night clan in killing the pirates. Night King Zhenwu took back the general appointment platform and made a great contribution to the Fifth Mainland. The Day-Night clan has also been conferred the title of Glory Family. What a joke. Mu En of Light, who was also an presiding judge, spoke up. This is a personal grudge between Leon's Armada and the Day-Night clan. It's not appropriate for us to interfere. Leon's Armada and the Day-Night clan can settle their personal grudges on their own. There are hundreds of pirate groups in the Day-Night flow zone right now, Mu Tianluan said in a low voice. Mu En smiled. According to what you're saying, the Day-Night clan members who aren't part of the Night King bloodline shouldn't interfere? Just let Leon's armada fight the Night King bloodline alone? You're twisting logic. Mu Tianluan was furious. Mu En smiled. I'm just speaking the truth. On the other side of the Hall of Honor's board of directors, the 9 directors were also arguing. One of them was a member of the Day-Night clan and he angrily shouted, "The Glory family was actually attacked by pirates? What a joke. This is a stain on the Hall of Honor's reputation, and it will be recorded in the annals of history. Those pirates must be eliminated and Leon's armada must be exterminated." The moment he finished speaking, another director retorted, "Let's not talk about the Glory family for now. Master Yuanshi has sent a message saying that he doubts Night King Zhenwu's ability to take back the general appointment platform. He now requests that the Day-Night clan's title of Glory family be removed." I agree. Master Yuanshi's words must be true. That's right, Master Yuanshi has never lied. Master Yuanshi is too great. The Day-Night clan director trembled with anger. Master Yuanshi's position in the Hall of Honor was too high, and he had too many disciples. It was impossible for him to fight against Master Yuanshi alone. Now, countless pirates had come to the Day-Night flow zone, and the various experts of the Day-Night clan had all been mobilized to fight the pirates. The Sun family, the Dire Barbarian clan, the Frost Moon sect, and the other great powers had all received the Day-Night clan's request for reinforcements, and they immediately sent reinforcements to kill the pirates. However, the Frost Moon sect had long since been sealed. The Sun family also wanted to help, but just a few days ago Myriad Swords Peak and Watermoon Villa had come looking for trouble, and they could barely fend for themselves. The Dire Barbarian clan had been attacked by the Soul Dream tribe, and these two clans did not need an excuse to start a war at any time. The Day-Night clan could not find any reinforcements, and the Phoenix family, which was closest to them, could not help them either. The Day-Night clan had a large army and many experts under their command, but they could not outnumber the pirates. They had no choice but to order the Day-Night clan's experts from the surrounding flow zones to return, but they were ambushed by experts from the Sword sect, who took advantage of the situation to steal resources. The Sword sect would not attack the Day-Night flow zone, but it was understandable that they would attack the surrounding flow zones since they often fought. The Day-Night flow zone was thrown into chaos. The Blazing Mist flow zone's Crimson Lord immediately contacted the upper echelons of the Day-Night clan, and they were willing to send reinforcements. However, before they could even leave the Blazing Mist flow zone, they were ambushed by many experts. These experts were all from the Outerverse, and there were more than 20 Enlighters, which was a third of the total number of Enlighters in the Outerverse. There were even people from Level Mountain Dojo and the Sea King's Dome among them. The Crimson Lord himself was also ambushed by the Old Smoker, and he was so angry that he roared like a madman. Chapter 1074. Everything seemed to be in chaos. However, this wasn't enough to wipe out the entire Day-Night clan. It was just a minor inconvenience. The true experts of the Day-Night clan were hidden in 2 places. One was Night King Planet, where aside from the slumbering Night King Dijiang, there were several old freaks with power levels of 300,000 to 400,000. These people were currently being held back by the pirates of Leon's armada. The other was Day-Night's ancestral land, where there had been an envoy-level powerhouse, but he had unfortunately been killed by the 6th mainland. Even so, the Day-Night clan's ancestral land still had an Enlighter with a power level of 450,000. There were several powerhouses hidden in the ancestral land, and any one of them could easily wipe out all of the pirates in the Day-Night flow zone. From the Day-Night clan's point of view, although there were many pirates, they were just small fries. Beneath the ancestral land's stone tablet, the ancient figures opened their eyes and one of them stood up. "I'll go take care of this." Just as that person was about to leave, the ancestral land's stone tablet suddenly changed. Rays of light shot out from the ground and sealed off the surroundings. The central figure's eyes widened. The source box protecting the tablet. He suddenly looked at the old man on the right who was also guarding the tablet. The old man opened his eyes and spoke in an ancient voice. "The Day King bloodline should not be exterminated." The central figure's voice was cold. You've already been granted a special edict to join the Night King bloodline, yet you still want to help the Day King bloodline? You're courting death. The old man laughed sorrowfully. Special edict? The Day King bloodline and the Night King bloodline are both part of the Day-Night royal family. Why can the Night King bloodline reign supreme? Even if I die, I won't let the Day King bloodline be exterminated. The central figure was furious. The source box protecting the tablet had been activated and they could not leave. This was a formation specifically designed to protect the ancestral land's stone tablets, so they could not enter or leave. This was troublesome. The moment the source box protecting the tablet was activated, Hui Day Knight entered the ancestral land with a woman following behind him. It was Cold Sis, the captain of the Great Yu Empire's 5th Imperial Squadron. Only Cold Sis, who was ranked 10th on the top 100 rankings, had been invited to the Day-Night Flow Zone by the Day-Night Banquet. Hui Day Knight saw that the source box protecting the tablet had been activated, and a sorrowful look appeared in his eyes. It's done. Lung Jia walked out and activated her cosmic ring. One after another, the androids appeared and charged towards the Day-Night clan's ancestral land. These androids were the strongest androids that the Great Yu Empire could currently bring out. They had the defenses of a cruiser and the power level of an explorer. They were definitely weak compared to the Day-Night clan, but there were still many of them and there were close to 4,000 of them. Lu Yin had taken out all of the Great Yu Empire's resources and cooperated with Leon's armada to start a war against the entire Day-Night clan. The Day-Night clan had never imagined that they would one day encounter such a calamity. The Hall of Honor had been obstructed, the Sun family, the Dire Barbarian clan, and other external reinforcements had all been ambushed, and the entire Day-Night Flow Zone had been attacked by pirates several times the number of Day-Night clan members. The powerhouses from the mausoleum had been trapped, and the powerhouses from Night King Planet had been obstructed. Everything had happened in an instant. This was Lu Yin and Wang Wen's plan. Dealing with the Innerverse behemoths seemed complicated, but in reality, all they needed to do was provide a bit of strength. The true opponent of the Day-Night clan was Leon's armada. Even the Hall of Honor did not want to offend one of the Cosmic Sea's 4 major regiments, especially Leon's armada, which was the leader of the 4 regiments. Heizage Leon was a ruthless person who had broken through the technocracy. Not only did he have the strength, but he also had a powerful background. His background was not in the Innerverse but in the Neoverse. No matter how powerful the Day-Night clan was, they were only a behemoth in the Innerverse, and they had yet to enter the Neoverse. After experiencing the invasion of the 6th mainland, especially the war at the border of Endless Weave, Lu Yin no longer felt that the Day-Night clan was as cautious as before. They were only a powerful clan and he had the courage to overthrow them. No matter how chaotic the Day-Night Flow Zone was, the countless people in the Innerverse were not paying attention to the Day-Night Flow Zone, but rather to Lu Yin. He was completely unscathed by the Night King heaven-splitting technique, which many found hard to believe. The Night King heaven-splitting technique was even more famous than the Night King's End, Daybreak technique, as it was the Night King who had brought the Day-Night clan to the position of the most powerful clan in the Innerverse. The Night King heaven-splitting technique had once slaughtered countless experts from the various great powers of the Innerverse, and it had changed the structure of many of the Innerverse flow zones. It was an unbreakable battle technique that could only be defended against with spiritual force, but Lu Yin had actually withstood it. Night King Zhenwu spat out another mouthful of blood, as he could not even retaliate against the emptiness palm. It was also at this moment that the outside world finally understood how powerful Lan Si's emptiness palm was. When Lan Si had been defeated by Lu Yin, many people had not been able to understand how powerful the emptiness palm was. But now they could clearly see that even Night King Zhenwu's 9-line battle force had been shattered by the emptiness palm. That was 9-lined battle force, the highest realm of battle force in the universe. Lan Si was shocked. He knew that the emptiness palm was very powerful, but it was not powerful enough to completely ignore Night King Zhenwu's defenses. Lu Yin's emptiness palm was different from Lan Si's, and it should be even stronger. Night King Zhenwu's eyes turned scarlet, and he roared as he raised his hand. Twin feather arrows shot out, but Lu Yin clenched his fist and used the same emptiness palm. However, he had used the Aeon Evolution True Scripture to reduce the power of the twin feather arrows, allowing the emptiness palm to shatter them. Lu Yin leaped through the void and kicked Night King Zhenwu out of the Evernight drill ground, smashing apart the first Night King statue along the way. The Night King clan members roared and dozens of them charged towards Lu Yin. Chapter 1075. Night King Zhenwu grinned and there were still traces of blood between his teeth. He looked extremely sinister. Lu Yin, do you think that you've won? Do you think that you'll definitely win? You were the one who summoned Leon's armada, right? Ah. Do you really think that you can defeat me? Let me tell you, that's impossible. No one can defeat me, let alone you. I'm the head of the 10 arbiters and I'm fated to be the chosen one. He then raised his hand and another 3-feathered arrow shot out. Everyone in the Innerverse who saw this scene was terrified. What innate gift did Night King Zhenwu have? How had he recovered? No one would have been able to withstand Lu Yin's previous attack, but he had actually recovered in an instant. What innate gift did he have? The leaders of the various great powers who had not paid much attention to the younger generation of the 10 arbiters were now shocked. The elder from the Wen family was astonished. This kid will definitely shake the entire Neoverse in the future. It will be difficult for anyone in his generation to be his match. In the sword sect, Lu Qianju aside. A terrifying unknown innate gift. A monstrous comprehension that allowed him to comprehend the Night King heaven opening technique. And an opportunity to obtain a peerless archery technique. This kid is truly fated to be the chosen one. Defeating someone like him will be very, very, very difficult. Even the sword sect's previous headmaster had said the word, difficult, which represented Lu Yin's current state of mind. He had not expected Night King Zhenwu's innate gift to be so terrifying, and he even suspected that it was similar to the Daoist possession that could stop time and allow him to recover. What was even more frightening was that Night King Zhenwu clearly had such an innate gift and the battle technique of the 3-feathered arrow, but Night King Zhenwu still wanted to use poison to deal with Lu Yin. Night King Zhenwu was extremely cautious. This sort of person seemed arrogant and conceited, but he also had a cautious mindset that others could not see. This was the most frightening aspect. Against the 3-feathered arrow, Lu Yin could only use the Aeon Evolution True Scripture to weaken it and then use his emptiness palm to meet the Yu secret art head-on. Night King Zhenwu also had no other way to deal with Lu Yin, so he could only continuously fire the 3-feathered arrow. The two of them were locked in a long battle. Night King Planet was unlucky and the ground cracked as the planet trembled. The statue of the first Night King had long since disappeared, and more than half of Evernight City had been destroyed. Nightless City had been destroyed and the Vigil Pavilion had also collapsed. Night King Zhenwu's eyes, Night King Zhenwu. Even so, outer space was not safe. Even though Night King Dijiang had lured Heizage Lian into an unknown battle in outer space, there were still shockwaves that swept through the area. It was as if doomsday had arrived around Night King Planet. Lu Yin and Night King Zhenwu weren't the only ones fighting on Night King Planet. The Night King clan's elders were also fighting against the Enlighters from Leon's armada. Something like this had never happened before in the history of the Day-Night clan. Even when the 6th mainland had invaded, they had given up because they had not been able to find Night King Planet. Underground magma erupted, burning the starry sky. Off in the distance, the Day King bloodline and the Night King bloodline were locked in a fierce battle. Zhou Day Night was holding back Night Queen Yanqing and dozens of other Day-Night clan cultivators by herself, while Zhanlong Day Night was fighting against Night King Gu. Although the White King's bloodline was far inferior to the Night King clan's experts, most of the Night King clan's experts had been pinned down by Leon's armada. They did not know how the other 10 arbiters were faring, but at least for now, they were certain that both Lu Yin and Lan Si had surpassed Lan Si. Lu Yin bombarded Night King Zhenwu until he sank into the ground, and the two charged into the lava. Lu Yin did not dare to stop, as the moment he did, Night King Zhenwu would be able to use the 5-feathered arrow. But if he did not stop, he would not be able to kill Night King Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu's innate gift was simply unfathomable. Night King Zhenwu continuously coughed up blood, but he still laughed maniacally. Keep fighting. Let's see how long you can keep fighting. You can't beat me and no one can beat me. Ha! Lu Yin gritted his teeth and continuously attacked with empty palm attacks. He suppressed Night King Zhenwu to the point that even Night King Planet was cracking. Could it be that he really could not beat him? What was his innate gift? Even with Night King Zhenwu's arrogance, he had not told anyone about his innate gift. This was his greatest trump card, and it was enough to put him in an invincible position. Beads of sweat mixed with blood dripped down and Lu Yin's arms felt weak. He decided to roll his die immediately. If Night King Zhenwu wanted to compete with his innate gift, then he could as well. Suddenly a voice entered his ears. Don't give up. Today might be the most glorious day of his life, but it might also be the darkest day of his life. I can't divine his future. It was Star Sibyl. Lu Yin had not expected her to say such things to him. She could not divine Night King Zhenwu's future? Just as he was thinking about it, a golden light appeared around Night King Zhenwu's body, and he recovered once again. He raised a hand and used the Night King heaven-splitting technique. Lu Yin was caught off guard and was struck directly. He did not have time to recite the Stonewall scriptures, and his mind was dazed as he crashed into the ground. Night King Zhenwu leaped up and panted heavily. He waved his hand and an arrow of star energy pierced through Lu Yin's body, pinning him to the ground. At this moment the scene before Lu Yin's eyes changed. He saw the first Night King again and he was still as imposing as ever. Night's End daybreak. Others might have been dragged into an illusion by Night's End, but not Lu Yin as he had comprehended the Night King heaven-splitting technique. Zhou Day Night spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, her face pale. Chapter 1076. Night King Zhenwu turned around and glared at her. His eyes were cruel and filled with killing intent. You're courting death. He then appeared in front of her and grabbed her by the head. He lifted her up and approached her with a cruel smile. Did you really think that things would turn around? I, Night King Zhenwu, am invincible and no one can defeat me. Today I'll show you how the Day King bloodline will die. I'll make sure that the entire Day King bloodline dies tragically like your parents did. I'll cut Lu Yin into 1,000 pieces right in front of you. He then smashed Zhou Day Night towards Lu Yin. Continue singing, Firewing Tribe. Continue singing. I, Night King Zhenwu, am invincible. Ah! The Fireplume tribe's song rang out, and it played the song of Night King Zhenwu's journey to invincibility. In outer space, the crowd had complicated expressions, as the strength that Night King Zhenwu had just displayed was truly unfathomable. In the Innerverse, countless people who saw this scene fell silent. Even the 10 arbiters had different levels of strength, and Lan Si's strongest attack was the Emptiness Palm. However, the Emptiness Palm could not even block a 4-feathered arrow, so Lan Si might not even be Night King Zhenwu's match. If Lance was like this, then what about the other 10 arbiters? Night King Zhenwu slowly approached Lu Yin. Lu Yin's vision blurred, and he finally understood the power of the Night King heaven-splitting technique. His body was nailed to the ground and his blood flowed everywhere, dyeing the surroundings red. Zhou Day Night struggled to get up and stood in front of Lu Yin, her eyes filled with stubbornness and hatred. Night King Zhenwu raised his head. Although he was also in a sorry state at this moment, he was the victor. The Day-Night clan's unparalleled spiritual force battle techniques, progenitor battle techniques, secret techniques and unfathomable innate gifts had given birth to a truly unparalleled powerhouse. Night King Zhenwu's display of strength left the entire universe speechless. Even the envoys of the older generation looked at Night King Zhenwu with intense fear. Once someone like Night King Zhenwu matured, no one would be able to stop him. Even the other 9 arbiters of the 10 arbiters would not be able to stop him. Although they did not know the true power levels of the other 10 arbiters, they knew that they could not surpass the current Night King Zhenwu. Countless people from the Innerverse and Outerverse had witnessed Night King Zhenwu reach the pinnacle of his life, and he was now feared by countless people. The originally neutral members of the Hall of Honor began to lean towards Night King Zhenwu. This person would definitely become one of the 5 astral children, and it might even be possible for him to reach the progenitor realm in the future. Even if such a person was unable to attain the ancestor realm, His strength was absolutely the strongest among his peers. This was the effect that Night King Zhenwu had wanted. He had poisoned Zhou Day from the very beginning in order to force her to comprehend night's end, daybreak in front of countless people in the universe. He wanted everyone to acknowledge that he was the leader of the 10 arbiters. From the very beginning he had wanted to use Lu Yin as a stepping stone to reach the top. Although there had been some unforeseen events along the way, the end result had been the same. Though this was even better. The stronger Lu Yin was, the more valuable it would be to be trampled on. Lu Yin's vision gradually cleared up, and the remnants of the Night King heaven-splitting techniques might slowly dissipated. He lifted a hand and crushed the arrow, half kneeling on the ground as he stared at Night King Zhenwu with great difficulty. Night King Zhenwu arrogantly replied, "How many times can you resist me? I'm not hurt at all. What about you? I gave you a chance but you didn't cherish it." No one can remain unscathed after offending the Night King clan. There hasn't been one in the past and there won't be one in the future. Night King Zhenwu's words were also a declaration to the entire universe. The first Night King had brought the Day-Night clan to the ranks of the Innerverse's strongest clans. Night King Zhenwu wanted to bring the Day-Night clan to the Neoverse and bring them to the pinnacle of the human domain. He wanted to use this banquet to let everyone in the Innerverse know that he, Night King Zhenwu, could not be disobeyed and that he would be invincible in the future. Countless hearts trembled as they stared at Night King Zhenwu in horror. At this moment, a figure staggered over from the distance, almost falling into a crack in the ground. Scorching heat spewed out from the ground, and Night King Planet trembled from time to time. This person fell to the ground multiple times, but she still stubbornly walked over. She had been walking for a long time just to get closer to this battlefield. It was a woman with a pair of white flaming wings on her back. She had an elegant temperament and should have been a very beautiful person. However, the person who had appeared in front of them was emaciated and looked like a dried corpse. Her eyes were empty and she looked somewhat frightening. Night King Zhenwu looked over and frowned. He coldly barked, "What are you doing here? Leave." The woman spoke slowly, her voice beautiful and intoxicating. 26 sisters have already become sacrifices in this battle. I want to ask, how much longer will this battle continue? Night King Zhenwu's gaze turned sharp and he waved his hand, causing a strong gust of wind to send the woman flying. "Get lost." When he heard the woman's words, Lu Yin's mind felt as if it had been struck by lightning. Physics. The number of times he had attacked Night King Zhenwu had been 26, and he remembered it clearly. He did not believe that there was an invincible innate gift that could perfectly heal injuries. There had to be an upper limit and he had not finished counting this upper limit. He had only counted 26 times. It was impossible for there to be an innate gift like Night King Zhenwu's that allowed him to recover perfectly and not be limited by the number of times he could use it. It was impossible. If it was not perfect healing, then transfer? Lu Yin suddenly looked up and stared at Night King Zhenwu. "You can transfer damage?" Zhou Day was shocked. Damage transfer? There was such an innate gift. Night King Zhenwu sneered and he looked at Lu Yin with pity. "You're very smart. That's right, it's transfer. I can tell you that there are over 1,000 Firewing tribe members on this planet that I can transfer damage to. In other words, unless you deal over 1,000 fatal injuries to me, I'm invincible and I can recover at any time." Zhou Day face went pale. How was this possible? How could there be such an innate gift? He then charged towards Night King Leng, grabbed him and brought him into outer space. Before leaving, he looked at Night King Planet worriedly. "Little Seven, this is your own choice. Whether you can win or survive is up to you. Leon's armada has already done everything that they can." All of the older powerhouses on Night King Planet were restrained by the various captains of Leon's armada, and they were all brought into outer space. At this moment, the entire Night King Planet was the battlefield between Night King Zhenwu and Lu Yin. The closer it was to the end, the more they could not afford to be disturbed. Night King Planet was cracking apart, and even though it was huge, it could not withstand an attack from someone whose power level was close to 300,000. Lu Yin's attacks did not stop as he continued to persevere. He did not believe that Night King Zhenwu had a perfect innate gift, and Night King Zhenwu's heart was his weakness. Night King Zhenwu could not retaliate against Lu Yin's continuous attacks, and Lu Yin had already learned his lesson. As he attacked, he recited the Stonewall scriptures to prevent Night King Zhenwu's spiritual force from counterattacking. Everyone looked at Night King Planet as they could sense that Lu Yin had already reached his limit. However, Night King Zhenwu was still continuously recovering. The golden light flickered from time to time, but every time it did, the recovery time would be extended. Every time the golden light flickered, Zhou Day Knight and the others felt a little more despair. At this moment, countless people in the Innerverse and Outerverse felt their hearts tighten as they clenched their fists. They inexplicably hoped that Lu Yin would emerge victorious. He had already done enough and he had also persevered enough. The leaders of the various major flow zones now had a deep impression of Lu Yin. Regardless of whether it was Lu Yin or Night King Zhenwu, once they matured in the future, they would both become invincible existences among their peers. Chapter 1077. On the surface of Night King Planet, broken fragments of the earth pressed down on the Firefeather girl's leg. Blood continuously flowed from her leg and not too far away magma spread out, burning the blood and turning the air red. The girl lowered her head. She could not see the battle but she could hear that her name was Ellen Gale. There was a thump as the ground split open. Lu Yin grabbed Night King Zhenwu and soared into the sky before slamming him onto the ground. Night King Zhenwu opened his mouth wide and spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression was pained and his gaze became even more ferocious. He was waiting for the moment when Lu Yin could not hold on any longer. He would not let this person die so easily, he would torture him to death. Lu Yin's arms trembled and blood continued to flow. He was really close to his limit but he still had not broken through his innate gift. He could only take a gamble and continue rolling his die. Once he rolled possession he would be able to recover perfectly. At that time they would see who would win. Ellen Gale faced the battlefield and the Firefeather tribe's battle song for Night King Zhenwu still rang in her ears. She slowly opened her mouth and a beautiful voice flowed out, guiding the Firefeather tribe's song to change into a sad one that no one had ever heard before. This was the Firefeather tribe's funeral song, and she was sending off her dead sister. The funeral song rang out and Night King Zhenwu's expression changed. His heart was in so much pain that he could not breathe. He turned around and stared at Ellen Gale. "Shut up." Ellen Gale knelt on the ground with her hands clasped in front of her chest. It was as if she was praying as she sang the moving funeral song. This funeral song was sending off her sister and Night King Zhenwu at the same time. Night King Zhenwu had never heard the Firefeather tribe's funeral song before, but this one caused his heart to ache so much that he could not breathe. He had a bad feeling and wanted to stop her, but Lu Yin punched him in the chest, causing Night King Zhenwu to spit out another mouthful of blood. He hurriedly tried to divert the damage, but the pain in his heart was suffocating him. It was accompanied by an indescribable grief, and he finally understood Ellen Gale's feelings. His heart contained Ellen Gale's blood as well as the blood of the entire Firefeather tribe. The Firefeather tribe had experienced sorrow, despair and helplessness since ancient times. At this moment Night King Zhenwu experienced it all. Humans were influenced by their emotions and they had the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Night King Zhenwu originally did not care about these things, but the more he did not care about them, the more his emotions were magnified. This was a pain that Night King Zhenwu had never experienced before. "Shut up, shut up." Night King Zhenwu bellowed. Lu Yin kicked out and stomped Night King Zhenwu into the ground. Lu Yin's eyes were bloodshot. "Night King Zhenwu, you're finished." He knew that Night King Zhenwu would not be able to deflect any more damage. No matter what the reason was, Night King Zhenwu was doomed. Lu Yin punched Night King Zhenwu's heart again and again. Night King Zhenwu bellowed and unleashed his Night King heaven-splitting technique, but his left arm was broken by Lu Yin. "This is Wendy's revenge." He raised his hand to form 4 arrows, but Lu Yin had broken his right arm in advance. "This is for slandering me." His spiritual force eruption had no effect on Lu Yin. The heart arrow had been released the moment Lu Yin attacked, but he had used the plan's secret art to divert the attack and tear through the man's flesh. Both of them were badly mutilated, and Lu Yin's fist landed on Night King Zhenwu's face, sending him flying and crashing into a stone wall. "This fist is for the Fireplume tribe." Night King Zhenwu could no longer deflect any more damage. This was not only because Ellen Gale had chanted the Fireplume tribe's funeral song, but also because all of the Fireplume women who were connected to him had committed suicide. His heart had been pierced by Lu Yin's contributions, and he had been unable to deflect the damage in time. More than 1,000 Fireplume women had committed suicide. This was Ellen Gale's determination, and she had been waiting for this day for a long time. She had even written down her final words in her diary. Now she was going to take Night King Zhenwu with her. Night King Zhenwu had brought the Fireplume tribe despair and pain, and this pain had made it impossible for Ellen Gale to continue living. At the same time, she was unable to stop herself from loving Night King Zhenwu. This man had given her the taste of love, and she was going to take him with her and leave. Night King Zhenwu was stuck in the stone wall, and he looked at Lu Yin with unwillingness as he coughed up blood. His eyes were bloodshot. I won't lose. I won't. I'm invincible. I'm the chosen one by the heavens. Lu Yin slapped out with one hand and slammed Night King Zhenwu deep into the ground. The entire surface of the ground cracked open, and Night King Zhenwu sank dozens of meters. Night King Zhenwu collapsed onto the ground like a corpse, coughing up blood. The inner verse and outer verse were silent and no one knew what to think. They could only watch in a daze. They were certain of one thing. Night King Zhenwu was truly finished this time. Outside of Night King Planet, Night King Dijiang appeared and tried to grab the planet, but he was cut down by the Overlord's blade. Zhou Xian angrily shouted, "Dijiang, you want to interfere?" Night King Dijiang's face darkened. Zhenwu has already been defeated. There's no need to continue fighting. Zhou Xian laughed maniacally. This is not a duel, it's a war. Night King Dijiang's gaze turned cold. Zhou Xian, do you really want to become mortal enemies with my Day-Night clan? Zhou Xian sneered. So what if I do? Night King Dijiang's eyes narrowed and he glanced at Night King Planet from time to time. Night King Zhenwu was very important to the Night King bloodline, as his innate gift was second only to the former first and third Night Kings. Furthermore, he could inherit the Star Tower and was the hope of the Night King clan's rise. Thus, Night King Dijiang could not allow him to be killed. Zhou Xian, my Day-Night clan is willing to pay any price as long as Night King Zhenwu lives, Night King Dijiang said in a low voice. He was the leader of the Day-Night clan, and speaking such words to a pirate was already an act of him putting down his dignity. Zhou Xian twirled his blade. There's no need. This battle is theirs and the outcome should be decided by them. On the other side of Night King Planet, various powerhouses from the Night King bloodline tried to rush into the planet to save Night King Zhenwu, but they were all stopped. Now, for the sake of Night King Zhenwu, he had completely exposed his strength to everyone in the universe. This was the Day-Night clan's foundation. Night King Dijiang was the leader of the Day-Night clan, and he had always been in a deep slumber. He rarely showed himself, but now that he shocked the heavens. Zhou Xian gulped. What are you? How did you do it? Night King Dijiang's expression was grave and his tone was icy. I've said it before. Take your people and leave and everything that happened today can be written off. Zhou Xian gritted his teeth. Lu Feng's eyes narrowed. Outside Night King Planet, the pirate captains who were blocking the Night King clan's experts were also helpless. The Day-Night clan was indeed one of the most powerful clans in the Innerverse. They had suddenly produced an existence with a power level of over 800,000, which was simply abnormal. On Night King Planet, Night King Zhenwu coughed up blood as he looked up at the sky. He laughed sinisterly and miserably. Lu Yin, do you dare to make a move? Do you dare? In the end you still don't dare to make a move. Lu Yin clenched his fists. In the distance, Zhou Day-Night was sorrowful. Night King Zhenwu laughed hysterically. Just you wait. When I return from the Neoverse, I'll become one of the 5 scions of the stars and inherit the progenitor's inheritance. At that time I'll trample you beneath my feet. You'll never be able to defeat me. Never. Lu Yin calmly looked at Night King Zhenwu. There's no need to wait. You're dead today. Night King Zhenwu glared at Lu Yin. You dare to kill me? Do you have the ability to kill me? Watch the clan leader. Forget about you, even these pirates won't be able to kill me. No one can kill me and you'll never be able to. I'll slowly torture Zhou Day Knight to death. Just you wait, I'll bury the entire Day King bloodline. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.